Surely mom and dad would want to live with me rather than you, Emma, since you can't even give them grandkids. We're moving in here, so you and your husband should move out already. That's what my pregnant sister-in-law, Karen, said while patting her growing belly. She seemed pleased when I simply replied, all right, but deep down, I felt relieved. This might finally help us cut ties. My name is Emma, I'm married to Scott, and together, we've been trying to deal with infertility. I used to work as a childcare worker and have always loved children, but after getting married, I learned I had trouble conceiving. It was a huge shock. I even told Scott that if he regretted marrying someone like me, I would understand if he wanted a divorce. But Scott, being the kind person he is, told me, I didn't marry you just to have kids. I married you because I love you. If having a baby is hard, let's face this challenge together. Hearing this, we decided to start fertility treatments. I often remind myself how lucky I am to have such an amazing husband. At first, I tried balancing the treatments with my job, but it became too overwhelming. My work shifts didn't match well with my appointments, and I grew emotionally sensitive. Sometimes, I'd see little kids and cry, thinking I might never have a child of my own. Not wanting to be a burden at work, and remembering Scott had once said I could stay home if I wanted, I decided to quit my job. Now, I'm a full-time housewife focusing on our fertility journey. Scott's younger sister, Karen, knows about our struggles. She already has 4 kids and is pregnant with her 5th. Seeing pregnant women is hard for me, but Karen doesn't seem to care. She often visits with her kids and says things like, Emma, you're a housewife now, right? Why don't you watch my kids for me? It's hard managing all of them by myself. You used to be a childcare worker, so this should be easy for you. Karen would leave her 4 kids with me while she went out for beauty treatments and manicures. When I told her I couldn't keep doing this, she'd say things like, in a society where people aren't having enough kids, I'm obviously more admirable because I'm raising children. You, who can't even have kids, should just do as I say. It was frustrating to babysit her children for free, even though she was my sister-in-law. On top of that, Karen's attitude was condescending, but what hurt me the most was seeing how much her children wanted their mom's attention. They'd often ask me, when will mom be back? And it broke my heart to reply, I'm not sure. I told Scott about how Karen was dumping her kids on me while she spent her time at salons. Furious, Scott called Karen to confront her, but Karen brushed it off, saying, Emma should be glad to spend time with kids since she can't have any of her own. She used to work in childcare, so it's no big deal. Scott then spoke to Karen's husband, Rob, about the issue, but Rob sided with Karen, saying, our kids like spending time with Emma, and it's really helpful for us. If Emma gets pregnant, we won't ask her to babysit anymore, but until then, please help us out. Karen is exhausted from raising kids, and since Emma is a housewife, she should be able to help. Scott told me that if Karen ever came over, I could just send her away. But whenever she visited, her 4 kids would run straight to the back room without even saying hello. Karen would quickly say, well then, take care of them for today, and leave before I could protest. One day, Karen surprised me by actually coming into the house. Normally, she just drops her kids off and leaves, so I was caught off guard when she asked, when are you moving to the new house? Do you have any designs or something? Scott and I were building a new duplex to live with his parents. The house was nearly finished, and we were preparing to move. Despite my fertility struggles, my in-laws had never said a single negative thing to me. In fact, my mother-in-law once told me, there are plenty of happy families without children. Those words were a lifeline for me. As my in-laws were getting older and dealing with aches and pains, we decided to live together to help them before they required full-time care. So, Scott planned the duplex. It was unusual for Karen to show interest in the house, but I showed her the blueprints and images anyway. She seemed curious, asking about the number of rooms and how much sunlight the house got. I assured her everything was well planned. She also asked when we planned to move. When I told her, she simply said, I see, and left, once again leaving her kids behind. I felt uneasy about her sudden interest in the house, but didn't dwell on it at the time. Eventually, we moved into the duplex, and my in-laws joined us a few days later. Living together was smooth and peaceful, and I felt lucky to have such kind in-laws. Then, one day, Karen showed up unexpectedly, this time at the new house. Of course, she brought her 4 kids along. Without even glancing at them, she ushered them inside and turned to me. Hey, Emma, we need to talk, she said. While my in-laws were busy being overwhelmed by Karen's kids, Karen pulled me aside into the hallway. I couldn't help but worry about whether my in-laws, who often complained about back pain, could handle taking care of those energetic children. That's when Karen said something shocking. "Hey, why don't you and Scott leave this house?" I was stunned. I hadn't expected her to say something like that, but Karen continued, completely ignoring my reaction. "Surely Mom and Dad would rather live with me than with you, since you can't even give them a grandchild, and besides, I'm their real daughter by blood. We're moving in here, so you and Scott should move out soon." As she stroked her pregnant belly, Karen spoke with arrogance. It was clear her plan was to live with my in-laws and have them take care of her kids. She even pointed to my in-laws, saying, "Look how happy they are to take care of their grandkids." But all I saw were my poor in-laws struggling to keep up with the rowdy children. There wasn't a hint of joy on their faces. I knew arguing with Karen was pointless. She wouldn't listen. My anger had been building for a long time, not just because of her constant jabs about my infertility, but also because she was taking advantage of my kind in-laws. After thinking it over, I came up with an idea. So, I nodded quietly and said, "Okay, we'll move out." Karen was thrilled. She immediately set a schedule for when we would move out and her family would move in. Then, as usual, she left her kids behind and left, but I felt a sense of relief. This was my chance to cut ties with her. Time passed, and the day came when Karen and her family moved into the duplex. I wondered how their move was going when my phone rang. It was Karen. As soon as I answered, she started yelling, "What the hell is this? Why haven't you moved your stuff out? There's no room for our things. And where are Mom and Dad supposed to go?" Scott, his parents, and I had left the duplex, but we didn't take all the furniture with us. Karen was furious about this, and I calmly replied, "The move was so sudden, so we only left for now. Also, your in-laws are with us." Karen fired back angrily, "Outrageous." But I countered, "I think it's outrageous that you and your husband are moving into the house Scott built without our consent. It's also outrageous to force the kids on us while you go out and have fun, especially when we've told you how hard it is to take care of them." Karen dismissed my points, snapping, "That's not the issue right now. Can I just throw away any furniture I don't like?" I replied, "Feel free, if you're really planning to move in, but are you sure about this?" Confused, Karen asked, "What are you talking about?" That's when I revealed the truth, or rather, part of it. "Can you and your husband handle the mortgage for that house? It's a large two-family house, and it's quite expensive." Karen had no idea that the mortgage was just a lie. The house was fully paid for with the savings of Scott, his parents, and me, but the lie was enough to scare her. When Karen angrily demanded to speak with Scott, he played along. With a mischievous smile, he told her the same lie, that there was still a mortgage to pay. Over the phone, Karen apparently broke down in tears. She realized they couldn't afford the payments and decided to move back to her old home with her husband Rob and their kids. Scott reassured her that she could back out of the move and told her we would also be returning home. When we returned to the duplex, happy to have avoided Karen taking it over, she stormed in furiously, ready for another confrontation. Karen yelled at us, "You never told us there was still a mortgage. Why did you keep it from us?" I casually replied, "Because you never asked." Karen's face turned red with anger. She ranted, "The kids were so excited, thinking this house would be ours. You've disappointed them. That's why you can't get pregnant. You need to make up for it by properly taking care of the kids. Playing with them is no big deal. It's better than doing nothing." As Karen kept ranting, my usually quiet mother-in-law suddenly stood up and slapped her. Karen looked shocked, and so was I, since my mother-in-law was normally so calm. In a sharp tone, my mother-in-law said, "You can't even handle the no-big-deal task of playing with your kids and instead dump it on Emma. You wanted to move into this duplex just to force your parenting duties onto us, didn't you? I was willing to help if you were struggling to raise your children alone, but who would want to help a daughter who offloads her responsibilities onto others and acts so entitled? Leave this house immediately, and don't come back." Half crying, Karen pleaded, "Aren't you on my side, Mom? I'm your real daughter, aren't I?" My father-in-law, who was also normally quiet, spoke up sternly, "It's because you're our real daughter that this is so disgraceful. I feel ashamed to have raised such a selfish child. I've heard from Scott how you've been mocking Emma for her difficulty in having a baby. That's something no one should ever do." Karen glared at me furiously, but I felt a small pity for her. I opened the door and said, "As your parents have said, please leave. I don't intend to help with your childcare anymore, so please do your best." Karen burst into tears and shouted, "You people are monsters." Before leaving the house, She never returned after that. Later, Scott received a call from Karen while he was at work. She was sobbing so much that it was hard to understand her, but it seemed her family was already in serious financial trouble. Karen and her husband Rob had been careless with their money. Karen spent on beauty salons and manicures, while Rob wasted money on lottery tickets. When their savings ran out, Karen thought moving into the duplex Scott had built would save them from paying rent and utilities. When Karen asked Scott, who earns a good income, for financial help, he refused. He couldn't forgive her for mocking my infertility. He told her, just cut back on beauty treatments and lottery tickets. But Karen cried, saying she didn't want to. Scott couldn't bring himself to help someone so entitled, even if she was his sister. Eventually, Rob ran out of money for lottery tickets and had to take a side job to make ends meet. Karen, too, could no longer afford her beauty treatments. She used to look polished and put together, but when we bumped into her months later, she was almost unrecognizable. Scott even had to point out, "Isn't that Karen?" before I realized it was her. Despite everything, her kids seemed lively and happy around her, which was a relief. Now for the miracle part of the story. I found out I'm pregnant, with twins. I couldn't hold back my tears when the doctor told me, and Scott, who was with me, cried tears of joy too. We shared our happiness together, and my in-laws were thrilled to hear they'd finally have grandchildren. Though I haven't told Scott, I secretly believe being free from the stress Karen caused helped me get pregnant. I feel incredibly grateful for Scott and my in-laws, who supported me through everything. Their kindness and love have blessed me with 2 new lives. Now, I just hope from the bottom of my heart that my babies will be born healthy.
You've got to be kidding me, Wendy. Frozen food again? Kyle's voice thundered across the house, rattling the walls. I stood there, clutching my swollen belly, feeling my pulse quicken. I'm doing my best, Kyle. I'm 8 months pregnant, I replied, my voice trembling as I fought back tears. Kyle's eyes narrowed, dark with anger. Well, if you love Frozen so much, why don't you freeze outside? With a swift movement, he shoved me towards the front door and slammed it shut behind me. I stumbled onto the cold porch in disbelief. The cold hit me like a wall. Shivering, I knocked on the door, hoping that Kyle would come to his senses and let me back in. But the minutes dragged on, and it became clear he wasn't going to. Desperation gnawed at me. Hey, are you okay? A voice called out from the sidewalk. I looked up to see Ethan, our neighbor, frowning with concern. Without waiting for my response, he jogged up and shrugged off his coat, draping it over my shoulders. Come on, let's get you inside, he urged gently, offering me his arm for support. I hesitated, feeling a mixture of gratitude and embarrassment, but the biting cold pushed me to accept his help. Thank you, I murmured, clutching the coat tightly. Ethan guided me towards his house next door. What happened? He asked, his tone cautious. I sighed deeply, feeling the weight of my current reality settle in. Kyle, he lost it. He locked me out, I explained, feeling a lump form in my throat. Ethan nodded understandingly, his face set with determination. You need to get warm. We can talk more inside. He opened the door and led me into his warmly lit living room. I sank into the couch, feeling tears well up. Ethan handed me a cup of steaming tea. Thanks, I said, wrapping my hands around the mug for warmth. You don't have to explain now, Ethan said softly, sitting across from me. But if you need anything, I'm here. The reality of my situation crashed down on me. Here I was, 8 months pregnant, thrown out into the cold by my own husband. The frustration and betrayal churned inside me. The silence stretched uncomfortable and heavy. Ethan's phone buzzed, cutting through the tension. He glanced at it and then offered it to me. Maybe you can call someone? A friend or family? I took the phone, my hands trembling slightly. My mind raced. Who could I call? My parents were far away, and I couldn't bring myself to explain this to anyone. I just don't know who to call, I admitted, feeling more lost than ever. Ethan's face softened with empathy. You can stay here for now. We'll figure it out in the morning, he offered. I managed a small, grateful smile. Thank you, Ethan. You don't know how much this means to me. He nodded, standing up. Get some rest. We'll sort things out, he assured, heading towards the kitchen to give me some space. As I sat there, the warmth of the tea spreading through me, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of this frozen nightmare. But for tonight, I would take the small comfort offered and try to find the strength to face whatever came next. The next morning I woke up to the smell of fresh coffee. Ethan had already been up for hours, it seemed. I groaned, feeling the tightness in my back from the previous day's stress. "Morning?" Ethan said brightly as he entered the living room with a tray. "I made you some breakfast." "Thanks, Ethan," I responded, trying to muster a smile. I still felt the sting of last night's events. As I nibbled on a piece of toast, memories of my time with Kyle came flooding back. We hadn't always been like this. I remembered when we first met at a mutual friend's party. We just clicked. I was drawn to his charm and ambition. Kyle had big dreams, and I was thrilled to be part of them. Our early years of marriage were like a dream. Kyle showered me with flowers and surprises. We'd talk late into the night about our future, our hopes and dreams. But things changed. "Kyle's been difficult for a while now," I said aloud, surprising myself with my admission. Ethan looked at me attentively, encouraging me to continue. "He works late, comes home angry and distant. It wasn't like this before." Ethan nodded. "Sometimes people change, but you don't have to accept it, Wendy. You deserve better." I sighed, feeling the weight of those words. Ethan's reassurance was warm, but the reality of my situation was cold and clear. I couldn't ignore the warning signs anymore. That evening, I confronted Kyle as soon as he walked through the door. "We need to talk," I said firmly. He glared at me. "What now, Wendy?" "Why have you been coming home so late, and your anger? It's getting worse." Kyle threw his jacket on the couch roughly. "Work is stressful, something you wouldn't understand considering you sit around all day." That hit hard. "I'm pregnant, Kyle. This isn't just sitting around. I'm trying, but you're never here to support me." He scoffed. "Maybe I'm not here because I don't want to be around someone who's always nagging." Tears sprang to my eyes, but I fought them back. "What happened to us, Kyle? We used to be happy." "People change, Wendy. Maybe it's about time you realize that," he snapped before storming off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind him. Left alone in the living room, I stared at the closed door, feeling a mix of anger and despair. This wasn't the man I married. This wasn't the life I imagined. The days blended into each other. Kyle's late returns became more frequent, his excuses layered with the scent of deceit. One evening, as he staggered in, I noticed a smudge of lipstick on his collar. My heart sank. "Where were you?" I demanded. "Out, with colleagues," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. "Colleagues? Which ones, the ones who wear red lipstick?" I retorted, pointing at the evidence. He looked down, flustered, then met my gaze with icy defiance. "You're being paranoid. You've always been paranoid." His words were like daggers, but they couldn't slice through the truth I was beginning to face. "Something's not right, Kyle, and I'm going to find out what it is." With that, I turned and headed for the bedroom, my resolve hardening. The man who once made my heart flutter was now turning it to stone, step by step. But if Kyle thought he could continue this betrayal unnoticed, he was sorely mistaken. The storm was just beginning. Kyle insisted we attend his parents' anniversary party, despite my growing fatigue. "You can't skip this, Wendy. My parents expect us," he said sternly, his tone leaving no room for argument. I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me, but nodded, trying to keep the peace. "All right. I just hope we don't stay too late." Kyle rolled his eyes. "Just don't embarrass me, okay?" We arrived at the celebration, the grandeur of the event doing little to lift my spirits. Charlotte and Robert greeted us warmly, their eyes subtly scanning for signs of trouble. "Wendy, you look wonderful," Charlotte said with a kind smile. "Thank you, Charlotte. I'm trying," I replied, forcing a smile. Throughout the evening, Kyle was his usual charming self with everyone else. I watched as he smoothly interacted, his facade impeccable. But when he glanced my way, his eyes were cold and indifferent. "You need to eat something, Wendy," Charlotte said gently, guiding me to the buffet. "I know tonight must be tiring for you." I nodded gratefully. "It's been a rough few weeks. Kyle's been different." Charlotte's eyes softened, and she hesitated for a moment. "If you ever need to talk, dear, you know where to find me." "Thank you, Charlotte," I murmured, feeling a flicker of hope amid the chaos. Kyle eventually found me, his expression hardening. "We need to make the rounds. Don't just sit here." I felt a pang of anger but stood up, following him as he moved around the room, schmoozing with guests. He kept a firm grip on my arm, his fingers digging in just enough to remind me of his control. As the night dragged on, my fatigue grew overwhelming. "Kyle, can we please leave soon?" I pleaded quietly as he finished a conversation. He shot me a sharp look. Just a little longer. Stop complaining. Finally, as the party began to wind down, we made our way towards the exit. Kyle's mood soured as we reached the car. You couldn't even last a few hours without whining, he muttered angrily. I swallowed the retort that bubbled up, the night's exhaustion and stress weighing heavily on me. I'm doing my best. Well, your best isn't good enough, he snapped, starting the car with a jerk. The drive home was silent, tension hanging thick in the air. As we pulled into the driveway, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief, just wanting to crawl into bed and forget the nightmare of the evening. But once inside, Kyle didn't let up. Next time, try not to embarrass me in front of my family, he sneered. Anger flared up in me. I'm 8 months pregnant, Kyle. You can't expect me to pretend everything's fine when it's not. He laughed bitterly. You think you have it hard? Try supporting this family while you sit around all day. I stared at him, feeling a mix of betrayal and rage. We can't go on like this, Kyle. Then maybe you should leave, he said coldly, turning his back on me. His words hung in the air, chilling me to the bone. The man who once promised to cherish and care for me had become a stranger, leaving me to wonder what had gone so wrong. As I went to bed that night, I knew things had to change. For the sake of my baby and myself, I needed to find the strength to face whatever came next. Kyle's absences became a pattern, and his once warm demeanor dissolved into something cold and unfamiliar. One evening, as I sat by the window, I heard him on a phone call. Yeah, Tina, I miss you too. I can't wait to see you again, he whispered, smiling in a way that sent chills down my spine. Tina, the name echoed in my mind, igniting a fire within me. Kyle hung up and walked inside, oblivious to my presence. Who's Tina? I asked, my voice trembling with anger. Kyle froze for a moment, then turned, his face a mask of indifference. None of your business, he replied, brushing past me. None of my business? Kyle, I'm your wife, I insisted, my voice rising. He scoffed. And you're also a nag. Maybe if you paid more attention to your own shortcomings, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I opened my mouth to argue, but he had already stormed off, leaving me with a swirling mix of anger and disbelief. I needed to know more, needed to find some clarity. The next day, while Kyle was at work, I went over to Ethan's place. I knew he had seen things that might shed light on the situation. He answered the door, concern etched in his features. Wendy, come in. What's going on? He asked, leading me to the kitchen. I sat down, feeling the weight of my suspicions. Ethan, have you seen Kyle with another woman? Anyone named Tina? Ethan's face tightened. He hesitated, then nodded. Yes, I've seen him a few times with a younger woman. I didn't say anything because I wasn't sure it was my place. My heart sank. Thank you for telling me, I managed to say, feeling a mix of gratitude and pain. Ethan reached out, touching my hand gently. Wendy, you don't deserve this. What do you want to do? I don't know, I admitted. But I need to find out the truth. Ethan squeezed my hand reassuringly. I'll help you however I can. That evening, as Kyle returned home later than usual, I stared at him from across the kitchen. How was work? I asked, watching for any signs of guilt. Exhausting. I'm going to bed, he muttered, not making eye contact. The next few days, I felt as though I was living in a fog. Kyle's increasingly cold demeanor only fueled my suspicions. Each early morning and late evening, the phantom presence of Tina loomed over our lives. One night, as Kyle was in the shower, I decided to check his phone. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the messages. There they were, texts from Tina. Conversations filled with endearments and plans that included hotel stays and secret meetings. The proof was undeniable. Confrontation was inevitable. As he exited the bathroom, I held the phone up. Kyle, care to explain this? I demanded, my voice barely concealing my fury. His face paled, then hardened. You went through my phone? That's low, Wendy. Not as low as cheating on your pregnant wife, I retorted. He laughed bitterly. Maybe if you weren't so wrapped up in yourself, things would be different. Tears of anger and hurt welled up in my eyes. I'm pregnant with your child, and you're off with someone else. How could you? Kyle turned away, not giving me the courtesy of a response. His silence was more damning than any words could be. As he walked out of the room, I knew this battle was far from over. With Ethan's support and the growing certainty of Kyle's betrayal, I steeled myself for what needed to be done. Kyle had lit the fuse. Now he would face the explosion. I couldn't sit back and let Kyle's betrayal go unchallenged. I reached out to Charlotte and Robert, feeling a mix of apprehension and determination. They had always been kind to me, and I hoped they would help. "Wendy, what's the matter?" Charlotte's voice was warm as she answered the phone. "Charlotte, I need to talk to you and Robert." "It's about Kyle," I whispered, struggling to keep my voice steady. There was a pause. "Come over, dear, we'll be here," she said softly. When I arrived at their house, my nerves were frayed. Charlotte and Robert greeted me with worried looks. "Please sit down," Charlotte urged, guiding me to the sofa. Taking a deep breath, I began. "Kyle, he's been having an affair. I found messages from a woman named Tina." Charlotte's hand flew to her mouth in shock. Robert's expression darkened. "I had a feeling something was off," he muttered. "I need your help," I continued. "I need to gather proof and confront him. I can't do this alone." Robert nodded firmly. "We'll help. Kyle needs to face the consequences of his actions." The days that followed were a whirlwind. Charlotte and Robert launched their own investigation, piecing together Kyle's deceit. They called in favors and connected with people in their social circle who knew more about his activities. One evening, I sat with Charlotte at her dining table. "We've found enough," she said, placing a folder in front of me. Inside were photos, phone records, and receipts. Solid evidence. I felt a surge of mixed emotions: anger, relief, sadness. "Thank you," I said, my voice cracking. "We're here for you, Wendy. You don't have to face this alone," Charlotte reassured. The next step was meeting with a lawyer. Charlotte accompanied me, her presence a comforting anchor. We explained the situation to the lawyer, who listened carefully. "This is solid evidence," he said, scanning through the documents. "You have a strong case for both divorce and a significant settlement." Kyle's betrayal was more than just an emotional blow. It was a violation of the trust and life we'd built together. And as painful as it was, I needed to protect myself and my baby. As we left the lawyer's office, Charlotte squeezed my hand. "You're doing the right thing, Wendy." A few nights later, Charlotte and Robert came over to our house. Kyle was out, no doubt with Tina. We went through the final details of our plan. "We'll confront him tonight," Robert said, his voice resolute. Hours later, Kyle stumbled in, the smell of alcohol on his breath. He froze when he saw us gathered in the living room. "What's going on?" he demanded, his voice slurred. Charlotte stepped forward, holding the folder of evidence. "Kyle, we need to talk." He blinked, confusion turning to anger. "What is this?" "You've been cheating on Wendy," Robert said bluntly. "We have proof." Kyle's eyes darted to me, then the folder. "This is ridiculous," he said, his bravado faltering. "It's all here, Kyle," I said, my voice steady. "The messages, the photos, everything." His face twisted with rage. "You've been spying on me?" "You left me no choice," I replied calmly. "We're done, Kyle. I'm filing for divorce." Kyle staggered back, his bravado crumbling. "You can't do this." "I already have," I said, standing my ground. "You'll face the consequences of your actions." As Charlotte and Robert stood beside me, I felt the strength of their support. Kyle's reign of deceit was over. It was time for him to face the fallout and for me to start rebuilding my life. It was the middle of the night when Charlotte and Robert arrived with a spare key. We knew Kyle would be at his most vulnerable, the perfect time to confront him with no chance to escape his lies. "Are you ready?" Robert asked, a glint of determination in his eyes. I nodded, the weight of the folder in my hands grounding me. "Yes, it's time." We quietly entered the house. The living room felt cold and empty, a reflection of our fractured lives. Kyle was asleep on the couch, snoring softly. Robert shook him awake, and he jerked up, blinking in confusion. "What the?" he stammered, trying to gather his bearings. "Kyle, get up. We need to talk." Robert's voice was steely and unwavering. Kyle rubbed his eyes, looking around at us. "What is this? Why are you here?" he demanded, anger rising as he fully woke. I stepped forward, holding the folder out. "We know everything, Kyle. Your affair with Tina, the lies, all of it." His face twisted in panic, then quickly shifted to anger. "This is absurd. You can't just break in and accuse me of things." "We're not accusing you. We're presenting facts," Charlotte interjected, her tone sharp. Kyle's eyes darted to the folder. "You've been spying on me?" he spat. "You betrayed me, Kyle." "I had no choice," I replied, my voice firm. "We have proof." Robert opened the folder and began displaying the evidence. Pictures of Kyle with Tina, detailed phone records, receipts for hotel stays. Kyle's anger melted into a defeated silence. "You think you can ruin my life with this?" he sneered, but the fear in his eyes betrayed him. "You've ruined your own life," I countered. "You shattered the trust in our marriage, and now you'll face the consequences." Kyle's bravado faltered. "What do you want, Wendy?" he asked, his voice tinged with desperation. "I want a divorce," I said bluntly. "And you're leaving tonight." "What?" His voice cracked. "This is my house." "Not anymore," Charlotte said, stepping forward. "We've already spoken to a lawyer. Wendy has a right to this home, especially with the baby on the way. You'll be staying elsewhere." Kyle's eyes flashed with rage. "You can't do this." "Oh, we can," Robert replied, his voice ice cold. "And we are. You will leave, or we'll call the police. Your choice." Realizing his defeat, Kyle stood up, hands trembling. "This isn't over," he hissed, grabbing his car keys from the table. "Yes, it is," I said, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Take whatever you need for the night. The rest can be arranged later." Kyle grabbed a few belongings, his expression a mixture of anger and helplessness. As he exited the house, I watched, feeling a strange sense of liberation. Once he was gone, the house seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Robert placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing, Wendy. This is the first step towards a new beginning." I nodded, gratitude welling up inside me. "Thank you, both of you, for standing by me." Charlotte smiled, her eyes full of warmth. "We're family, Wendy. We'll get through this together." As I locked the door behind us, the weight of Kyle's betrayal began to lift. It wasn't just a night of reckoning. It was the dawn of my new life. And with Charlotte and Robert by my side, I felt stronger than ever, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Kyle didn't waste time attempting damage control. The next day, I found him on our doorstep, looking disheveled and desperate. "You can't lock me out of my own house, Wendy," he said, his voice wavering between anger and pleading. "I've already started the divorce process. This house is for me and the baby," I replied firmly, standing my ground. He stepped closer, his face contorted with rage. "You think you can just take everything from me?" "You took everything from me the moment you started that affair," I retorted, clutching my belly protectively. Kyle's eyes burned with a mix of desperation and fury. "You'll regret this. Mark my words." "I think you're the one who'll regret it," I said, closing the door in his face. Days turned into a blur of legal meetings and preparations. The reality of my decision was both daunting and liberating. Charlotte and Robert were a constant source of support, their presence a fortress of stability. One afternoon, as I packed some of Kyle's belongings, Ethan stopped by. "Hey, how are you holding up?" he asked gently. I sighed, wiping sweat from my forehead. "It's tough, but I'm getting through it." Ethan nodded. "I'm here if you need anything. And Wendy, you're stronger than you think." His words sparked a glimmer of reassurance in me. "Thanks, Ethan. It means a lot." Later that week, I received a call from my lawyer. "Wendy, I wanted to update you on the settlement," he said. "Kyle is fighting for everything, but we've got a strong case." "Thank you," I responded, appreciating the steady confidence in his voice. The next time Kyle showed up, it was with his own lawyer. "We need to discuss the terms," Kyle said, trying to mask his frustration with a veneer of professionalism. We sat at the dining table, the lawyers diving into a tense negotiation. "Wendy should retain the house, given her condition and the baby's needs," my lawyer insisted. "This is ridiculous," Kyle's lawyer countered. "Kyle deserves a fair share." I leaned forward, addressing Kyle directly. "You put us in this situation. If you want to fight, you'll be fighting a losing battle." Kyle's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, his lawyer continuing to argue on his behalf. The discussion dragged on, but in the end, the agreement tilted in my favor. The house would be mine, as well as a substantial portion of our assets. Kyle's face was a mask of restrained fury as we finalized the documents. "You'll pay for this, Wendy," he threatened quietly as they left. That night, I lay in bed, feeling the weight of the day lift slightly. I had won a battle, but I knew the war was far from over. In the days that followed, news of Kyle's downfall spread. His colleagues and friends began to distance themselves, the scandal tainting his reputation. Financial penalties started piling up, adding to his growing list of troubles. Meanwhile, I moved back to my parents' home, focusing on my health and the baby. Charlotte and Robert frequently visited, their support unwavering. One afternoon, Charlotte sat down with me, holding my hand. Wendy, you've been incredibly brave through all of this. We're proud of you. Thank you, Charlotte, I said, tears of gratitude welling up. I couldn't have done it without you and Robert. As the sun set that evening, bringing a sense of calm over the house, I felt the stirrings of hope. The road ahead was still uncertain, but with each day, I was moving closer to a future free of betrayal and filled with the promise of new beginnings. The day finally came when I brought my baby girl into the world. After hours of labor, the sound of her first cries brought an overwhelming surge of relief and joy. "She's beautiful, Wendy," Charlotte whispered, tears in her eyes as she held my daughter for the first time. I gazed at my newborn, feeling an immense sense of love and protectiveness. "Her name is Emily," I said softly, touching her tiny hand. Charlotte and Robert visited us often, bringing both emotional and financial support. They helped me finalize the divorce, ensuring that I and Emily would have a stable future. One afternoon, as we sat in the living room, Robert handed me an envelope. "This is for you and Emily. From us," he said. "What is it?" I asked, opening it. Inside was a generous check. "We want to make sure you have everything you need," Charlotte said. "Consider it a gift for Emily's future." Tears filled my eyes as I hugged them both. "I can't thank you enough. You've been like parents to me." "You are family, Wendy," Robert replied, his voice filled with warmth. Moving back to my parents' home was a fresh start. They welcomed us with open arms, and their support added to the strength I was slowly regaining. One evening, as Emily slept peacefully, I received a call from Ethan. "Hey, I heard the news. Congratulations on Emily," he said warmly. "Thanks, Ethan." "It feels like a new chapter is beginning," I responded, glancing at my sleeping daughter. "Listen, I wanted to stop by and see how you're doing. Maybe tomorrow?" he asked. "I'd like that. Thank you for being there," I said, feeling a comforting sense of companionship. The following day, Ethan arrived with a small gift for Emily. "Here, I got this for her," he said, handing me a plush teddy bear. "Thank you, Ethan. She'll love it," I said, smiling. We sat down and talked, the conversation flowing easily. "How are you holding up?" he asked, genuine concern in his eyes. "I'm better," I admitted. "Having Emily and the support from everyone has made a huge difference." Ethan nodded. "You've been through a lot, Wendy. I'm glad you're finding your strength." As the weeks went by, the financial settlement came through, securing Emily's and my future. Kyle's legal battles and financial ruin were constantly in the background, but I focused on moving forward. One afternoon, as I held Emily, Charlotte and Robert visited. "Wendy, we have some news," Charlotte said, her expression both serious and hopeful. "What is it?" I asked, feeling a flutter of apprehension. "Kyle has given up on contesting the divorce and the settlement," Robert said. "He's accepted the terms." A wave of relief washed over me. "That's good news. It means you can fully focus on building a new life for you and Emily," Charlotte said, hugging us both. Kyle had lost everything: his family's trust, his financial stability, and the life he took for granted. The public revelation of his affair added to his disgrace, leaving him isolated and estranged. As I watched Emily grow, surrounded by the love and support of those who truly cared, I felt a sense of peace. The storm had passed, and in its wake, I found strength and clarity. Reflecting on the journey from betrayal to empowerment, I knew that the future held challenges, but it also held promise. With Emily in my arms, I felt ready to embrace whatever came next, determined to provide a loving and stable home for her. The shadows of the past were just that, shadows. And in the light of new beginnings, they couldn't hold us back. We were forging ahead, resilient and hopeful, ready to build a life free from deceit and filled with authenticity and love. Our families may be forcing this marriage, but I never loved her. She's just a means to an end. I froze at the sound of Josh's voice, my heart pounding in my chest. This couldn't be real. He had to be joking, right? No. I needed to hear more. "I'm the only one you love, Josh. Promise me you'll call it off." There she was, Emma Walker, with that syrupy voice. I peered around the corner, making sure I was hidden from view. Josh and Emma were standing too close, their faces inches apart. His eyes, which I once thought kind and genuine, were now cold and calculating. "Emma, you know how much my father's approval means to me. Once the wedding is done, I'll end it with Lena. You have my word," said Josh, his voice devoid of any emotion. My heart sank as their words hit me like a ton of bricks. My mind raced back to all those moments we'd shared, the laughs, the plans, the dreams of a future together. Had they all been lies? I decided then and there to confront Josh. No more hiding, no more eavesdropping. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. Josh, I need to talk to you. Both of them turned to me, Emma's face draining of color while Josh's expression transformed into a mask of feigned concern. Lena, what are you doing here? He stammered, quickly stepping away from Emma. I think the better question is, what are you doing? I shot back, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and heartbreak. How long has this been going on? Lena, it's not what you think. Josh began, but I wasn't in the mood for lies, not anymore. Spare me, Josh. I heard everything, I replied, my voice steadier now. How could you? Were you ever honest about anything with me? Or was this all a grand scheme? Lena, please, let's talk about this, he implored, reaching out to touch my arm. I stepped back, feeling the sting of betrayal burn through me. Emma, stepping forward timidly, tried to speak. Lena, we didn't want it to come out like this. We were going to tell you. Tell me? When? After you walked down the aisle with my fiancé? I interrupted, turning my gaze back to Josh. Do you have anything to say for yourself? He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. I sighed, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I had to gather myself. No tears? Not here, not now. I thought you were different, I stated, my voice low but firm. But now I see you're exactly as selfish and calculating as they come. With that, I turned on my heel and walked away, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. My father had always told me Josh was a good man, reliant, trustworthy. How wrong we both were. As I reached the front door, I heard Josh calling after me. But his words were lost to the wind. I needed to be alone, to figure out my next steps. This engagement, this relationship, they were all built on a foundation of lies. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Dad. So excited for our family dinner tonight. I can't wait to see you and Josh. My heart ached as I typed out a response. Something's come up? Can we reschedule? I hit send, knowing the dinner was the least of my worries now. As I drove away, I vowed to myself that Josh would not get away with this. Actions have consequences, and he and Emma would soon learn that firsthand. Driving away from the nightmare, my mind raced back to how it all began. Meeting Josh felt like fate. My father was admitted to the hospital where Josh worked. Dad often spoke highly of Dr. Miller, praising his dedication and skill. I was skeptical, but my father was persistent. You should meet him, Lena. He's a good man, Dad said one day, his voice tired but hopeful. During one of my visits, Josh approached us. Mr. Thompson, how are you feeling today? He asked, his smile warm and professional. Dad nodded, introducing us. Little did I know then, this was the beginning of a deceitful journey. Our relationship developed quickly. Josh seemed perfect, handsome, successful, and kind, everything a father could want for his daughter. When he proposed, his father, Dr. Richard Miller, was thrilled. Our fathers shared a vision of uniting their families, but now that vision stood shattered. Lena, I think we should get engaged, Josh said one evening at dinner. He slid a small velvet box across the table. My heart skipped a beat as I opened it, revealing a sparkling diamond ring. What do you think? I glanced at my father, who smiled approvingly. Yes, Josh, I'd love to, I replied, thinking we were heading toward a beautiful future. How wrong had I been? But soon after our engagement, Josh became increasingly absent. Late surgery, he'd text. Patient complications, he'd say. At first I dismissed it, trusting his dedication to his work. But the excuses grew frequent and the doubts began to accumulate. One evening, I tried to talk to him about the wedding details. Josh, have you thought about the flowers for the ceremony? He barely looked up from his phone. Whatever you want, Lena. I'm busy with a case right now. His dismissiveness stung. I felt like a project he'd lost interest in. Still, I pushed the doubts aside, blaming the stress of his job. Until that day, I overheard his conversation with Emma. Now the pieces were falling into place, making sense in the most hurtful way. I had been naive, believing in his facade, but the truth was out, and I had to navigate the aftermath. I parked outside my father's house, took a deep breath, and walked in. Dad, we need to talk. He looked up from his book, concern etching lines deeper into his face. Is everything okay, Lena? No, it's not. Josh. I hesitated, the weight of my next words heavy on my tongue. Josh has been seeing someone else. He never intended to marry me. Dad's expression shifted from confusion to anger. What do you mean? I repeated the conversation I heard between Josh and Emma. My father's face reddened with fury. That scoundrel! How could he play us like this? I nodded, feeling a mix of sorrow and determination. We need to stop this charade, Dad. I can't marry him. He sighed, sadness replacing anger in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Lena. I thought he was different. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, I admitted. But he won't get away with this. I'll see to that. With my father's support, I felt a little stronger. The road ahead would be tough, but I was ready. Josh's betrayal had ignited a fire in me. He thought he could use me and discard me. He was about to learn how wrong he was. As I left my father's house, I knew there was much to do. Wedding plans needed canceling, and damage control measures had to be put in place. But above all, I had to confront Josh and Emma to reclaim my dignity and show them the real cost of their deceit. Days turned into a haze of agony and disbelief. I tried to keep my composure, but I couldn't shake off the gnawing feeling that I needed to know the full extent of Josh's betrayal. One evening, while sorting through the drawer, I found some of Josh's things. There was a stray receipt from a fancy jewelry store dated just last week. The item listed wasn't my engagement ring. My heart pounded, playing out scenarios in my head. Was this for Emma? Who else could it be? I decided to tackle it head-on. I waited until Josh came home, pretending I didn't already know anything. He walked in, tired and distracted. Hey, Josh, how was your day? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Long. I'm going to hit the shower, he replied, barely looking at me. His indifference only fueled my resolve. By the way, I said, pulling out the receipt, I found this in the drawer. What's it for? Josh froze, the color draining from his face. It's a gift. For who? I pressed, watching his discomfort grow. Just a patient to cheer her up, he lied, his voice lacking conviction. Don't lie to me, Josh. We both know there's more to this, I countered, holding his gaze. He opened his mouth to respond, but my phone rang, breaking the tension. It was Emma. The audacity. Quickly, I answered and put her on speaker. Emma, hi, what do you want? Josh, it's urgent. I need to see you. Emma's voice came through, sounding distressed. I watched Josh's face as he realized he was caught. He looked like a deer in headlights. Emma, Josh is right here. Why don't you tell us both what's so urgent? I said, my voice icy. Lena, Emma stammered. Silence hung in the air until I finally cut it off. You two disgust me, I said, hanging up the call. Get out, Josh. You're not welcome here anymore. Josh didn't argue. He quickly grabbed a few things and left. As the door closed behind him, I collapsed on the couch, the reality of my situation settling in. But I needed more proof, more closure. The next day, I decided to follow Josh. I pretended to go to work, then circled back and parked near our house. After an hour, Josh emerged, driving off. I followed at a distance, heart pounding. He drove to a small cafe where Emma joined him. I watched from my car as their affectionate gestures confirmed everything. It was a bitter pill to swallow, their betrayal in full display. I snapped pictures with my phone, documenting their meeting. I needed undeniable proof. For what, I wasn't sure yet, but I knew I had to protect myself and my family from further harm. That night, I returned home, my mind buzzing. I called my dad, needing his strength. Dad, it's worse than we thought, I said when he answered. I've got proof that Josh is cheating with Emma. I'm so sorry, Lena. That man has no soul, he responded, his voice heavy with sorrow and anger. What's next? First, I'll gather more evidence. Then we'll make sure neither of them can hurt us again, I replied, determination hardening my resolve. As I hung up, I could feel a shift within me. I was no longer the naive woman blindly in love. I had been hurt, but I was not broken. Josh and Emma would face the consequences of their actions, and I would emerge stronger, ready to reclaim my life. The days seemed to blur together as I plunged into the wedding preparations. It was a cruel irony, planning a wedding I knew would never happen. Dad remained blissfully unaware, while still harboring hope for a grand union. I needed to be sure, to have irrefutable proof before tearing down those hopes. One evening while we worked on the guest list, Dad looked at me with a wistful smile. It's going to be beautiful, Lena. He's a great man, and you two will be so happy. I forced a smile, my stomach churning at the thought. Yeah, Dad, I hope so. Later, as I was going over the venue details, I noticed small, unsettling inconsistencies in Josh's behavior. He seemed too eager to let me handle everything. Our conversations became increasingly superficial. Each detail I brought up was met with indifference. "Josh, what do you think about the music for the reception?" I asked one afternoon, trying to gauge his interest. "Whatever makes you happy, Lena," he replied without looking up from his phone. The facade was cracking, and I decided it was time to dig deeper. While cleaning the apartment, I found a crumpled receipt for an expensive necklace, definitely not something he'd bought for me. Determined to uncover the whole truth, I decided to confront Emma. I found her at the hospital, just outside the oncology ward. She was chatting with a colleague when I approached. "Emma, can we talk?" I said, my voice steely. She looked taken aback but nodded. "Sure, Lena. What's up?" "Not here. Let's go to the cafeteria," I suggested, leading the way. Once seated, I laid the receipt on the table. "Care to explain this?" Emma blinked, the color draining from her face. "Lena, Spare me the lies, Emma. I've seen you with Josh multiple times," I interrupted, my patience wearing thin. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she stammered. "We were going to tell you." "Tell me what? That you've been sneaking around with my fiancé? That this entire engagement is a farce?" I fired back, my voice rising. People around us were starting to stare, but I didn't care. "It's not just about us," Emma said, her voice barely a whisper. "Josh has been using you. Your father?" "What about my father?" I demanded. "Josh has been exploiting your dad's connections for his own gain, financially and politically," Emma confessed, her eyes darting around nervously. I felt my blood run cold. "You're coming with me." I grabbed her arm and dragged her out of the cafeteria. We needed to settle this now, with Dad present. At home, I found Dad in the living room, absorbed in his book. He looked up, surprised to see me with Emma. "Dad, we need to talk. Now," I said, not bothering to hide my anger. "What's going on, Lena?" he asked, bewildered. "Emma has something to tell you about Josh," I said, glaring at her. Emma swallowed hard. "Mr. Thompson, I'm so sorry. Josh has been using your connections for his personal gain. He never intended to marry Lena." Dad's face went pale. "What are you saying?" "The engagement was a strategy, for power, for influence. It was never about love," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, Dad." He looked at me, devastated. "I thought he was a good man," he whispered. "We'll deal with this, Dad?" Together, I assured him, feeling the weight of our collective betrayal. I turned to Emma, the anger burning again. "You will help us expose him. Every detail, every lie." Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I will. I'm so sorry, Lena. We had our proof. Now, all that was left was to take action. Josh thought he could use us, betray us without consequence. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. The next morning, I woke up resolved. Today was the day I'd gather the final proof. I left for work as usual, but turned back halfway, quietly letting myself into the house. Josh's car was still in the driveway. My heart raced with anticipation and nerves as I made my way inside. I crept through the hallway, hearing muffled voices from the living room. Josh's deep tones and Emma's high-pitched responses were unmistakable. Slowly, I approached, phone in hand, ready to record. "Emma, we need to be careful," Josh was saying. "Lena's close to finding out. We can't let this slip now." Emma sighed. "I hate this, Josh. Why can't you just break it off with her already?" "Not until the deal with her father is sealed. The money and connections, it's all crucial," Josh replied, his voice cold. "Once it's done, we'll figure it out." A wave of anger surged through me. Recording their conversation felt like the only way to validate my next steps. I leaned against the wall, capturing every vile word. Emma spoke again. "But she's starting to suspect. We have to be ready." "I know," Josh said, irritation evident in his voice. "That's why we have to play it cool. Once everything is in place, we'll end things." I had heard enough. I took a deep breath and stepped into the room, phone still recording. "Everything in place, huh, Josh?" I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. They both jumped, turning to see me standing there, my phone held high. Josh's face went pale while Emma's eyes widened in panic. "Lena, what are you doing here?" Josh stammered, trying to regain his composure. "I think the question is, what are you doing, Josh?" I replied, holding up my phone. "I have everything recorded, your lies, your schemes, it's all here." Josh tried to step forward, but I held up my hand. "Don't. You've done enough." Emma looked at me, tears forming in her eyes. "Lena, we didn't mean for it to go this far." Spare me your apologies, Emma. It's too late for that, I said coldly. Josh reached out as if to grab the phone. Lena, please, let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about, I snapped. I'm sending this to our families. Both of them deserve to know who you really are. Without waiting for a response, I hit send, forwarding the recording to a group video call with both families. The call connected, and faces appeared, curious and confused. Everyone, please listen, I began. What you're about to hear will explain everything. I played the recording. Gasps and expressions of shock filled the screen. My father's face turned red with rage while Dr. Miller's eyes darkened. Josh, is this true? Dr. Miller demanded, his voice shaking with anger. Josh stood frozen, unable to respond. The silence was broken by my father's voice. Josh, you betrayed my daughter and our trust, he said, his voice trembling with emotion. How could you? Dr. Miller turned to his son, fury etched on his face. You are a disgrace, Josh. Effective immediately, you are stripped of your status at the hospital. Emma tried to speak, but Dr. Miller silenced her with a glance. You too, Emma. You're fired. Leave now. Before logging off the call, I addressed everyone. This engagement is off. Josh and Emma's deceit ends today. I will not be a pawn in their game any longer. With a final glance at Josh's defeated face and Emma's tear-stricken one, I ended the call. My heart pounded with a mix of triumph and sorrow. This was the end of their lies and the beginning of my reclaiming my life. Whatever came next, I was ready. Josh and Emma learned an important lesson that day. Betrayal comes with a heavy price. The aftermath of the video call left a turbulent wake. I was back at my father's house, the tension palpable as we awaited the arrival of the Miller family. Dad had demanded a face-to-face confrontation, and Dr. Miller had reluctantly agreed. The doorbell rang, and Dad opened it to reveal a somber Dr. Miller and a defeated-looking Josh. They stepped inside silently, taking seats across from us. Dr. Miller cleared his throat, looking at me with pity. Lena, I'm deeply sorry for what my son has done. His actions are inexcusable. Josh stared at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Dad, his voice thick with emotion, addressed Josh directly. You used us. You betrayed my daughter, my family, and our trust. How do you justify that? I was pressured, Josh stuttered. I thought it was the only way to secure my future. Your future? I interrupted, anger rising. You trampled over my life for your own selfish gain. Did you ever think about anyone but yourself? Josh finally looked up, his eyes filled with regret. I'm sorry, Lena. I never meant to hurt you. Dad wasn't having it. Sorry isn't enough. You manipulated us from the start. How can we believe anything you say? Dr. Miller, shaking his head, spoke firmly. Josh, you will not be inheriting any of my assets. You've proven time and again that you're unworthy of that responsibility. Josh looked stricken, his world crumbling around him. Dad, please. No, Josh. Dr. Miller cut him off. You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it. Emma, who had been standing quietly by the door, stepped forward. Lena, I'm truly sorry. I never should have gotten involved in this. You're just as guilty, Emma, I replied, my voice steady. You knew what was happening, and you went along with it. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I know, and I'll have to live with that. Dr. Miller turned to my dad. Eric, I've reviewed some financial documents and discovered something alarming. Josh has been siphoning money through your accounts. Dad's face turned ashen. What? Josh has been routing funds from your joint ventures into his personal accounts, Dr. Miller explained. It's a considerable amount. Dad sank into a chair, the weight of the revelation hitting him hard. How could you, Josh? Josh didn't respond, unable to face the gravity of his betrayal. I stood feeling the need to take control. We'll need to consult a lawyer. This isn't over. Dr. Miller nodded. I agree. We'll support you in any legal actions you choose to pursue. As we concluded the meeting, I felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. The confrontation had exposed the full extent of Josh's deceit, but it also left wounds that would take time to heal. Lena, I'm so proud of how you've handled all this, Dad said as the Millers left. You're stronger than you know. Thanks, Dad, I replied, hugging him. We'll get through this together. That night, I sat by the fireplace, feeling the weight of the day lift slowly. The battle wasn't over, but I had allies and a renewed sense of purpose. Josh and Emma had shown their true colors, and now it was time to rebuild and move forward. As I stared into the flickering flames, I made a promise to myself. This was just the beginning, Every step I took from here on out would be toward justice and reclaiming the life they had tried to steal from me. The lawsuit moved swiftly. Thanks to Dr. Miller's cooperation, we gathered a mountain of evidence against Josh. But there was another matter that demanded attention. My closure. I scheduled a meeting at our lawyer's office. When I arrived, Emma was already there, nervously twisting her hands. Josh showed up a few minutes later, looking haggard and defeated. Our lawyer, Mr. Clark, called the meeting to order. "Today, we're here to discuss the settlement terms," Mr. Clark said, his voice steady. "Lena has requested full disclosure and adequate compensation. Josh, you are to provide a complete financial statement." Josh avoided eye contact, passing over the documents. I scanned them, anger simmering beneath the surface. "This is outrageous," I said, placing the papers back on the table. "You've taken so much from my father and me. I demand substantial alimony." "Lena, please," Josh began, but I cut him off. "No, Josh, you don't get to plead. You systematically exploited our trust," I spat. "This is the least you owe." Our lawyer nodded. "Given the extent of Josh's deceit, it's fair to ask for significant compensation. Do you acknowledge this, Josh?" Josh looked defeated. "I do." Emma, looking shaken, turned to me. "Lena, I'll pay whatever share you demand. I was complicit and I'll take responsibility." "You better," I said, my voice icy. "Both of you will have to pay for what you've done, not just in money, but in facing the consequences of your actions." Mr. Clark outlined the terms. "Josh, you're to provide a monthly alimony that reflects the financial impact you've caused. Emma, given your involvement, a portion of your salary will be allocated to Lena until the total amount is settled." The seriousness of the situation pounded like a drum in the room. Josh looked like he wanted to protest, but he stayed silent. Emma nodded, tears streaking her face. "Is this agreeable to all parties?" Mr. Clark asked. "Yes," Josh said quietly. "Agreed," Emma nodded. "Fine," I said, feeling a mixture of relief and lingering anger. "Let's finalize this." As we wrapped up, I stood up to leave. Josh reached out, his eyes filled with regret. "Lena, I know apologies don't mean much now, but I am sorry." I met his gaze, seeing the shell of the man I once thought I loved. "Sorry doesn't undo what you did. Live with your choices, Josh. I know I will." With finality, I walked out, feeling the weight of the past lift slightly. It was done, legally at least. The emotional scars would take longer to heal. Outside, I took a deep breath, letting the crisp air fill my lungs. The battle was over, and I had won. But the victory felt bittersweet. Days turned into weeks as I began dissolving the remnants of my shared life with Josh. I sold the apartment, liquidated our assets, and reclaimed my independence. For every step back, I took two forward, rebuilding my life piece by piece. One afternoon, as I packed the last of my belongings, my phone buzzed. It was Bill Clarkson, a colleague who always showed an interest in my well-being. "Lena, how about we grab coffee? There's a new place downtown," he suggested. "Sure, Bill. I'd love that," I replied, realizing it was time to embrace new beginnings. As we sipped our coffee, Bill's genuine kindness and interest started healing the emotional wounds. His presence was a reminder that not everyone was like Josh, a deceiver hiding behind a facade. I listened and laughed, enjoying the moment. For the first time in a long while, I felt a semblance of peace. The ordeal had reshaped me, making me stronger and more resolute. Life had dealt its blows, but I stood tall, determined to write my own story. Every step forward was a testament to my resilience and my unwavering spirit. And so amidst the ruins, I found hope, ready to rise again, stronger than ever. Weeks passed and the dust began to settle. Financially, Josh and Emma paid dearly, and the legal matters were wrapping up. Emotionally, it was a journey, but I found solace in my work and new friendships, especially with Bill. One morning at the office, Bill knocked on my door. "Got a minute, Lena?" "Sure, Bill. What's up?" I replied, looking up from my designs. "I've been thinking," he said, taking a seat. "You're incredibly strong, Lena. I admire how you've handled everything." I smiled, appreciating his words. "Thanks, Bill. It hasn't been easy, but I'm getting there." He hesitated before speaking again. "I was wondering if you'd like to come to a small get-together this weekend. A few friends, nothing fancy, just a chance to relax a bit." "That sounds nice. Count me in," I said, grateful for the distraction. Saturday came, and I arrived at Bill's place. He greeted me at the door with that warm smile. "Glad you could make it, Lena," he said, ushering me inside. The evening passed pleasantly, filled with laughter and easy conversations. For the first time in a while, I felt a genuine sense of happiness. It wasn't just about moving on, it was about finding joy in the little things again. As the night wound down, Bill and I sat on his porch, overlooking the city lights. "It's beautiful out here," I said, sipping my drink. "It is." "You know, Lena, I've always admired your determination and spirit," he said, his tone sincere. "I'm glad we've gotten closer." "I am too, Bill. You've been a wonderful friend during a tough time," I replied, feeling a warmth in my chest that was more than just the drink. He looked at me, eyes earnest. "I want you to know that I'm here for you, whatever you need. Whether it's a friend or something more, I support you." Tears welled up in my eyes, this time from gratitude rather than pain. "Thank you, Bill. That means more than you know." He reached out, gently taking my hand. It was a simple gesture, but it made all the difference. In that moment, I felt truly seen and valued. In the days that followed, Bill and I grew even closer. We spent more time together, both at work and outside. His steady presence was a balm to my wounded heart, and I found myself looking forward to each day. One Sunday, as we strolled through a park, Bill turned to me. "Lena, there's something I've been wanting to ask you." "What is it?" I asked, curious. "Would you like to go on a proper date with me?" "No group settings, just us," he said, smiling. "I'd love that," I replied, my heart fluttering slightly. As we navigated this new chapter, my past with Josh seemed like a distant memory. It wasn't forgotten, but it no longer held power over me. I was moving forward, stronger and more sure of myself than ever. One evening, as Bill and I shared dinner, I felt a profound sense of contentment. "You know, Bill, I never thought I'd feel this way again," I admitted. "Neither did I. But here we are," he said, raising his glass. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my glass against his. Life had taken me through hell and back, but I had emerged not unscathed, but undefeated. With every step, I forged a path of resilience and hope, determined to write the rest of my story with the strength I had discovered within myself. As Bill and I continued to walk this new journey together, I knew that whatever lay ahead, I was ready. The future was mine to shape, and I intended to embrace it fully, with a heart open to all the possibilities it held. "How dare you bring that child into our lives?" Gloria's voice cut through the quiet of the hospital room like a knife. Her eyes burned with anger, and every word she spat felt like venom. I clutched the tiny bundle in my arms, feeling a chill run down my spine. I struggled to keep my voice steady. "What are you talking about? Joel, where were you when I needed you the most?" Joel stood silent, his eyes darting between his mother and me. The tension in the room was suffocating. He opened his mouth to speak, but then closed it, looking away. Gloria's face turned a deep shade of red. "Joel is sterile, Ashley. He can't be the father. How could you do this to him, to us?" My heart pounded. "This can't be true. Joel, tell her she's wrong." I pleaded, my voice breaking. Joel finally stepped forward. I don't know, Ashley. Gloria's right. We talked about it after my surgery last year. I can't have children." His voice was low, almost a whisper. I couldn't breathe. The weight of his words pressed down on me. "But Joel, you were there when how can you doubt this baby is yours?" Tears blurred my vision. Gloria sneered, stepping closer to me. "You must have found someone else to get what you wanted when Joel couldn't. This child isn't his." A surge of anger exploded inside me. I stood up, my legs trembling beneath me. "Joel, look at our baby. Look at her. She has your eyes." I held the baby closer, my voice rising. Joel refused to meet my gaze. "Ashley, this just doesn't add up." I felt my world crumbling. The betrayal was too much to bear. I turned to Gloria, glaring at her. "You did this, didn't you? You filled his head with lies." Gloria raised her chin, defiant. "I did what any mother would do. I protected my son from deceit." The room fell silent, but my mind raced. I couldn't believe this was happening. I needed answers. But more than that, I needed to get away from this toxic environment. The door creaked open, and a nurse walked in. She froze, sensing the tension. "Everything okay in here?" she asked, her eyes darting from Joel to Gloria and finally to me. "No," I said firmly. "Nothing is okay. I need some time alone with my baby." Joel and Gloria exchanged glances before Gloria hissed, "We're leaving, but this isn't over, Ashley." With that, they turned and left. The nurse closed the door behind them and came closer, her expression softening. "You must be Ashley, right?" I nodded, trying to hold back my tears. I'm Renee. We went to high school together, she said gently. I'm so sorry to see you like this. Do you need anything? I let out a shaky breath. I don't know what to do, Renee. Renee placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. You don't have to do this alone. We'll get through this together. Just focus on your baby for now. Thank you, I whispered. I really needed that. She smiled warmly. Anytime. You're stronger than you think. Paul, Ashley, don't let them break you. As Renee walked out, I glanced down at my sleeping baby. Despite the storm raging around us, I felt a spark of hope. I would find the strength to fight back for her sake and mine. The battle was just beginning. You've been gone when I needed you the most, I said to Joel, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. The hospital's harsh lighting did nothing to soften his detached expression. He shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the ground. I've had my reasons, Ashley. You just don't understand. How could I understand? You left me alone, and now your mother is accusing me of betraying you. My heart ached with the weight of his indifference. Renee, my old friend from high school, entered the room at that moment. Her compassionate eyes took in the scene, and she swiftly moved to my side. Hey, are you all right? She asked, her voice filled with concern. Not really, I stammered. I'm a mess, Renee. Renee cast a cold glance at Joel. What on earth is going on here? Joel's face tightened. This isn't any of your business, he replied coolly. Oh, it is my business when my friend is being accused of something so vile. Renee shot back. Joel's eyes narrowed. Stay out of this, Renee. Renee's voice didn't waver. No, you stay out of this until you're ready to support your wife and child. Ashley deserves better. She turned to me, her eyes softening. You need to get away from this. I felt a rush of gratitude, but I don't have anywhere to go. Renee placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You do now. Come, get your things. You're coming with me. I hesitated, looking at Joel one last time. His face was impassive, offering no comfort, no sign of the man I thought I knew. Numbly, I nodded, realizing I couldn't stay here any longer. As we collected my belongings, Renee's presence felt like a lifeline. Thank you, Renee. I don't know what I would have done without you. Don't mention it, she replied warmly. You're like family, Ashley. You don't turn your back on family. We walked through the hospital corridors, my newborn daughter cradled in my arms. There was an odd sense of relief leaving that sterile, oppressive place. Renee's car was parked outside, and she helped me settle in, securing the baby's car seat with practiced ease, her movements calming me. As she started the engine, she glanced over. You'll be okay. We'll figure things out together. I'm so grateful, Renee. I really thought I'd lost everything. You've still got people who care about you, she assured me, her eyes on the road. What Joel and Gloria did was unthinkable. You deserve better. The drive to Renee's house was a blur. I was too drained to absorb much, but Renee's unyielding support made everything bearable. We arrived at her cozy home, and she led me inside, her gestures inviting and warm. Renee showed me to a small but comfortable guest room. This will be your space. Make yourself at home. I hugged her tightly, tears welling up. Thank you, Renee. This means the world to me. Get some rest, Renee said softly. You've had a rough day. As I settled down, exhausted and emotionally drained, my daughter's soft breaths were the only sound in the room. I gazed at her, feeling a fierce protectiveness. No matter what, I had to be strong for her. Renee's home felt safe, a sanctuary from the betrayal I'd faced. I knew there were hard days ahead, but for now, I had a friend to lean on, and that made all the difference. I woke up early, the morning light creeping into the room. The events of the previous day came rushing back, but I felt a small sense of determination building. I had to move forward, not just for me, but for my daughter. Renee knocked softly and walked in. Morning, Ashley. How are you holding up? I managed a weak smile. Trying my best. Thanks again for everything. Of course. Hey, I've been thinking, she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Have you ever considered that Joel might be the one cheating? I stared at her, taken aback. No way. He's always been so caring. But doubt started to creep in. Renee shrugged. Men hide things well. It's worth finding out. The idea nodding, but how? Renee leaned closer. We could hire a private investigator. I know it sounds drastic, but you deserve the truth. I mulled it over. Okay, let's do it. I need to know. Renee nodded and got up. I'll make some calls. Meanwhile, focus on your baby. Things will get better. Later that afternoon, Renee introduced me to Craig, a middle-aged private investigator with a no-nonsense demeanor. Ashley, this is Craig. He's helped a lot of people in tricky situations. Craig gave a curt nod. Nice to meet you, Ashley. Renee mentioned you have some concerns about your husband's fidelity. I felt nervous but firm. Yes, I need to know if he's been cheating on me. Craig pulled out a notepad. Tell me everything you know. When did you start suspecting? I took a deep breath. Well, I didn't suspect anything until recently. Gloria, his mother, insisted he's sterile and accused me of cheating. Joel went along with it. I don't know what to think anymore. Craig scribbled notes. I see. When did Joel's behavior start changing? A while ago. He became distant, often working late. Now looking back, it feels suspicious, I confessed. Craig nodded. That's a good start. I'll need access to all his information, phone bills, credit card statements. If there's something going on, we'll find it. Renee interjected. I can get that for you, Craig. Great, I'll get to work. It might take a week or two, but I'll keep you updated, Craig said as he stood up. Thank you, Craig, I said, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. After he left, Renee turned to me. You did the right thing. Whatever we find, you'll have the truth. I hope so. I'm scared, Renee. What if it's true? We face it together, Renee reassured me. But for now, let's focus on getting you settled. Days turned into a week, and I clung to Renee's support. One evening as we were having dinner, my phone buzzed. It was Craig. Ashley, it's Craig. We need to meet, he said, his tone serious. I felt a lump in my throat. Okay, when? Tomorrow morning. Renee's place, Craig confirmed before hanging up. Renee noticed my pale expression. What is it? Craig? He has answers, I whispered. We'll get through this, Renee said firmly. No matter what. Tomorrow seemed too far away, but I knew it would bring clarity. All I wanted was the truth, no matter how painful. With Renee by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came next. Craig sat on Renee's couch, his eyes grave as he spread out photos and documents on the coffee table. My heart pounded as I looked at him. What's the news, Craig? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Craig took a deep breath. Ashley, I won't sugarcoat it. Joel has been seeing a woman named Caitlin Emerson. They've been together for months. What? The word escaped my lips before I could stop it. My vision blurred with tears as I stared at the evidence in front of me. Photos of Joel and Caitlin laughing, holding hands, and even entering a hotel together. Renee clenched her fists. That bastard! And Gloria knew all along, didn't she? Craig nodded. Gloria is complicit. She even facilitated their meetings. Caitlin works at Joel's father's company. Gloria hoped they'd have a baby, giving her the grandchild she wanted. The betrayal was a punch to my gut. I can't believe this. All of them. They lied to me. My hands shook as I held one of the pictures. Joel looked so happy, so carefree, a stark contrast to his distant behavior with me. Craig's voice cut through my haze. There's more, Ashley. Joel's been using company funds to support Caitlin. This could be useful in your case. Useful. The word felt hollow. Revenge wasn't enough to soothe the ache in my chest. What should I do next? I whispered, feeling lost. Renee squeezed my hand. We fight back. You need to take legal action, Ashley. Craig nodded. I agree. I can help you gather more evidence, but you'll need a good attorney. I met Renee's steady gaze and saw the determination in her eyes. Okay, let's do it. They can't get away with this. The next few days were a whirlwind of phone calls and meetings. Renee took time off work to be by my side, and with Craig's help, we found a top-notch family law attorney named Maria Sanchez. Maria sat across from me in her office, her demeanor professional yet compassionate. Ashley, you have a strong case here. Joel's infidelity, combined with his misuse of company funds, can work in our favor. We'll push for a DNA test to prove the baby is his, and then demand alimony and child support. But what if Joel refuses the test? I asked, worried. He won't have a choice. The court will mandate it, Maria assured me. Her confidence gave me a fleeting sense of hope. Thank you, Maria. I want justice for my daughter and me. You'll get it, she said firmly. We'll start preparing the paperwork. This will be a battle, but you're not alone. Later that evening, Renee and I sat on her porch, the cool air soothing my frayed nerves. I never imagined I'd be here, Renee. My whole life feels like a lie. Renee took my hand in hers. You'll come out stronger, Ashley. They tried to break you, but look where you are now. You're fighting back. I looked at my daughter, a asleep in her crib behind the screen door. "It's all for her," I said softly. "I'll make sure she has a better future." Renee nodded. "And I'll be right here with you every step of the way." The moon cast a gentle glow over us, a silent witness to the beginning of my battle for justice and a future free from deceit. I felt a fire igniting within me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about reclaiming my life. "We need to fight this. For you and your baby," Renee said, her voice filled with determination as she paced the living room. I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "Yes, and I'll make sure he pays." "They all will," I replied with a resolve I hadn't felt before. Renee set down a stack of documents. "Maria has prepped everything. We're ready to file for the divorce and start the proceedings." I took a deep breath, looking at the legal papers. My hands shook slightly as I picked them up. I never thought it would come to this. "But here we are," I muttered. "Just remember why you're doing this," Renee said firmly. We spent hours going through every detail with Maria, ensuring our case was airtight. The evidence was damning. Joel's affair, the financial misuse, and Gloria's involvement. I knew facing them in court would be tough, but I had no choice. The next morning, I found myself outside Joel's office, heart pounding. Renee had insisted on coming with me for moral support. "You've got this," she whispered as we walked in. Receptionists' heads turned as we entered, whispers filling the air. I spotted Joel behind his desk, looking up in surprise as Maria and I approached. "Ashley?" he began, his tone laced with confusion. Maria stepped forward, her presence commanding the room. "Joel Parker, we are here to serve you with divorce papers and a court-ordered DNA test. You've been cheating on my client and have been using company funds to sustain your affair." Joel's face went pale. "You can't be serious," he stammered. "I'm dead serious," Maria replied, handing over the documents. "You will provide a DNA sample, or you'll face legal repercussions." Joel's eyes flicked to me, a mix of anger and desperation. "Ashley, you don't have to do this. Think about my father's company. Think about us." I felt a surge of fury. "You should have thought about that before betraying me, Joel. This is what you deserve." He clenched his jaw, but before he could respond, Gloria stormed into the office, her face twisted with rage. "What is going on here?" Maria didn't flinch. "We're serving Joel with divorce papers, Miss Parker. Your complicity in his affair won't be overlooked either." Gloria scoffed. "This is absurd. You're destroying our family, Ashley." "Family?" I echoed, my voice cold. "You destroyed our family the moment you decided to cover up his affair." Gloria's gaze hardened. "Mark my words, this isn't over." I met her glare with steely resolve. "No, Gloria, it's just beginning." We turned to leave, and as we walked out, I felt a sense of empowerment. Renee squeezed my shoulder, her smile warm. "You were amazing in there." "Thanks, Renee. I couldn't have done it without you." Back at Renee's house, we gathered more evidence, every piece strengthening our case. Craig continued to dig, uncovering more of Joel's deceit. The more we found, the more determined I became to see this through. Each night, Renee and I would go over every detail, preparing for the courtroom battles ahead. My daughter's presence kept me grounded, reminding me why I was fighting so hard. "I found more discrepancies in Joel's accounts," Craig reported one evening, laying out the latest findings. "This will further prove his financial misconduct." I nodded, feeling the weight of the evidence. "Good. Let's use everything we have." Renee's eyes sparkled with determination. "We're going to win this, Ashley. They won't know what hit them." With every passing day, my resolve deepened. This fight was about reclaiming my dignity, securing a future for my daughter, and ensuring Joel faced consequences. As the days to the first court hearing ticked down, I felt a fire burning within me. This was our chance for justice, and we wouldn't stop until we had it. "Joel, you need to take this DNA test to prove everything," the attorney insisted, her tone unwavering as she slid the papers across the table towards him. Joel glared at her, his fist clenching. "No way in hell," he shot back, panic evident in his eyes. Maria didn't flinch. "You don't have a choice, Joel. The court has mandated it. Refuse and you'll face severe consequences." I watched him, my resolve hardening. We were in Maria's office, the air thick with tension. This was a critical moment, and Joel's desperation was palpable. Joel turned to me, his face contorted with anger and fear. "Ashley, you really want to drag us through this? It's a media circus waiting to happen." I met his gaze steadily. "You should have thought about that before betraying me." He slammed his fist on the table, making me flinch. This is all your fault, you and your accusations. No, Joel, this is your fault. You made your bed, and now you have to lie in it, I retorted, my voice steady. Maria cleared her throat, bringing the focus back. Joel, sign the papers. The quicker you do this, the better it will be for everyone involved. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples, clearly agitated. I need more time. Maria shook her head. You don't have more time. The court date is set and you need to comply. No more delays. Joel's shoulders sagged, the fight seemingly draining out of him. Fine, he muttered, picking up the pen and scribbling his signature. As Joel signed, a knock on the door broke the suffocating silence. Renee walked in, her expression both determined and supportive. Everything all right in here? Just getting some formalities out of the way? Maria replied, taking the signed documents. Renee looked at Joel, her eyes filled with disdain. You really thought you could get away with it? Joel sneered at her. Stay out of this, Renee. She stepped closer, her voice low and menacing. No, Joel, I won't. Ashley's my family, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect her. I felt a surge of gratitude towards Renee. Her presence was my anchor in this storm. Maria stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. I'll see both of you in court. Be prepared for a fight, Joel. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Maria turned to us, her expression softening. We're on the right track, ladies. Stay strong. Back at Renee's home, we debriefed, our nerves raw but spirits unbroken. What a scene, Renee said, shaking her head. But you handled yourself well, Ashley. I sighed heavily, feeling exhausted but relieved. Thanks, Renee. I couldn't have done it without your support. And we're not done yet, she reminded me. This is only the beginning. The court battle is next. I nodded, determination sparking in my chest. We're ready for it. The preparation for the court case intensified. Every evening was filled with strategy meetings with Maria and Craig's updates on any new findings. The more evidence we had, the stronger our case grew. One evening, as Maria was going through some last-minute details, she paused and looked up at me. Ashley, I just want you to know how strong you've been through all this. It takes a lot of courage to fight for what's right. Thank you, Maria. It's not just for me. It's for my daughter, I said, thinking of the future I wanted to secure for her. Renee, who had been listening quietly, smiled and nodded in agreement. And you'll get through it, Ashley. We're in this together. As we wrapped up the night's meeting, I felt an overwhelming sense of unity and purpose. We had a tough battle ahead, but with friends like Renee and allies like Maria and Craig, I knew we had a fighting chance. The court date loomed closer, but my determination grew stronger. Joel and Gloria might have underestimated me, but they were about to learn just how fiercely a mother could fight. Joel, sign these divorce papers, or we'll see each other in court, I said calmly, sliding the papers over to him across the table in the bustling downtown diner. Joel's face turned red as he stared down at the papers. You wouldn't dare. Think of my father's company, he pleaded, desperation in his voice. I'm thinking of our daughter's future. She deserves stability and support, I responded, keeping my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. The other patrons began to take notice, their eyes flicking our way. Joel glanced around, clearly uncomfortable with the public scene. Ashley, let's not do this here, he whispered harshly. Why not? You weren't afraid to humiliate me, I shot back, and I'm done hiding. Joel's eyes narrowed as he leaned in. And what about Gloria? She'll never let this go. Gloria's involvement only makes our case stronger. Your mother enabled your affair, supported it even, I replied, not backing down. Renee, who had been sitting quietly beside me, decided to jump in. Joel, think about the consequences. If this goes to court, your reputation will be ruined. Do you really want that? Joel's face contorted with anger. Renee, I'm warning you. Stay out of this. She laughed softly. You don't scare me, Joel. Sign the papers. It's the best thing for everyone. Joel's jaw tightened, his eyes darting around the diner. People were openly staring now, whispering among themselves. The pressure was mounting. Fine, he spat, grabbing the pen. But don't think for a second this is over. He scrawled his signature angrily on each page, practically stabbing the pen into the paper. I took the signed documents, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. This is the first step, Joel. The DNA test is next. You'll see the truth. He stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. You'll regret this, Ashley. Mark my words. Maybe, I replied, watching him storm out of the diner. But at least I'm fighting for what's right. Renee squeezed my hand. You did great, Ashley. We got what we came for. I nodded, my hands still trembling from the confrontation. Thanks, Renee. I just hope this nightmare ends soon. We're getting closer, Renee assured me, one step at a time. Back at Renee's home, we called Maria to update her on the situation. He signed the papers, I said, relieved. Good, Maria replied. Next, we'll move forward with the DNA test. Joel won't be able to dodge it. I'm ready, I said, feeling more determined than ever. The days that followed were filled with preparations for the upcoming court battle. Craig provided more evidence of Joel's financial misconduct, strengthening our case even further. One evening, as Renee and I sat in the living room, we received a message from Maria. The DNA test is scheduled for next week. We'll have the results soon after. I can't wait to put all this behind me, I said, looking at my daughter sleeping peacefully in her crib. You're almost there, Renee said, and you've been unbelievably strong through it all. I smiled at her, feeling a rush of gratitude. I couldn't have done it without you, Renee. We're family, she replied simply, and we're almost at the finish line. As the court date approached, I felt a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. The confrontation with Joel was just one battle in a larger war, but I was ready to see it through. For my daughter, for myself, and for the justice we deserved. The final showdown loomed, and I was prepared to face whatever came next. With Renee by my side and the support of Maria and Craig, I knew we had the strength to win this fight. The truth would come out, and Joel's deceit would be laid bare for all to see. The end was in sight, and I was ready to reclaim my life. Ashley, I know it's a lot to ask, but I'd like to help raise your child. We can build a new life together, Renee stated sincerely, her eyes meeting mine as we sat on her porch. Her words took me by surprise. Renee, are you sure? This is a huge commitment. She smiled warmly. I've never been more sure. We've been through so much together, and I can't imagine a life without you and your daughter in it. Tears welled up in my eyes as I grasped her hands. Thank you, Renee. I couldn't have done this alone. As the final court date approached, we focused on preparing for the hearing. Maria assured us that everything was in order, but the anxiety gnawed at me. The thought of facing Joel and Gloria in court was daunting. The day arrived and the courtroom was tense with anticipation. Joel and Gloria sat on the opposite side, their faces hard and unyielding. Joel's attorney whispered furiously in his ear, but Joel just glared at me. Maria stood confidently, presenting our case. She detailed Joel's infidelity, the financial misconduct, and Gloria's involvement. The evidence was damning, and the judge's stern gaze never wavered from Joel. In conclusion, Your Honor, we request full custody for Ashley and appropriate alimony and child support, Maria finished, her voice strong and clear. Joel's attorney tried to counter, but the evidence was overwhelming. They couldn't deny the DNA test results, proving Joel was the father. The judge's decision was swift and decisive. Based on the evidence presented, I grant Ashley full custody and order Joel to pay alimony and child support, the judge declared, his gavel coming down with finality. Joel's face turned an even deeper shade of red. This isn't fair, he yelled, standing up. Sit down, Mr. Parker, the judge commanded. You've had your chance. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as the judge's words sank in. It was over. We had won. Outside the courtroom, Renee hugged me tightly. You did it, Ashley. It's finally over. I nodded, tears streaming down my cheeks. I couldn't have done it without you, Renee. Thank you for everything. As we finalized the divorce, I received the first alimony check and set up the child support payments. The weight that had been crushing me for months began to lift. One evening, as the sun set, Renee and I sat on her porch, watching my daughter play in the yard. We did it, I said quietly. Renee smiled. Yes, we did. And now we can start fresh. We're going to be just fine, aren't we? I asked, feeling a sense of peace for the first time in a long time. Yes, we are, Renee replied firmly. We have each other, and that's all we need. As the weeks turned into months, Renee and I built a new life together. We created a loving home for my daughter and began to dream about the future. I found a job that allowed me to support myself and contribute to our household. Renee's unwavering support and love gave me the strength to heal and move forward. We formed a bond that was unbreakable, a family forged through the fires of adversity. One afternoon, while watching my daughter play in the park, Renee turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Have you ever thought about what you want to do next?" I smiled, watching my daughter's laughter fill the air. "I want to make sure she has the best life possible, and maybe go back to school, get a degree and build a career." Renee's eyes sparkled with encouragement. "That sounds perfect, and I'll be here, supporting you every step of the way." As the seasons changed, so did our lives. The chapter of betrayal and deceit was closing, and a new story of love, resilience, and hope was unfolding. With Renee by my side, I knew we had a bright future ahead. "Aaron, what's your deal? Some kind of college dropout?" Helen's sneer was unmistakable. I tightened my grip on the coffee mug, my heart pounding. "Actually, Mrs. Bradley, I never went to college. I had to start working right after high school." "Oh, high school? Look at that, Luke. Your wife's barely educated," Helen laughed, casting a glance at her son. Luke's eyes, though, looked anywhere but at me. I took a deep breath, focusing on the warmth of the coffee mug in my hands. Helen's words stabbed like icy needles. I forced myself to remain calm, remembering the determined path that had led me here, even against the odds of my modest upbringing. Luke and I had met 2 years ago at a high-end corporate event. He was handsome, well-spoken, and came from a world far removed from mine. Our connection had been immediate and intense. Everything felt like a whirlwind: dinners, late-night talks, spontaneous trips. Luke had proposed within 6 months, and I had accepted, not realizing the storm Helen would bring into our lives. We'd only been married for a month when I discovered just how venomous Helen could be. Tonight was our first family dinner post-honeymoon at the Bradley mansion. I'd hoped to make a good impression, but it was clear Helen had different plans. "Mother, can we drop it?" Luke finally said, his voice strained. He didn't meet my eyes. Helen ignored him, her gaze trapping me like a spotlight. "Aaron, dear, how do you expect to navigate our social circles? They're not like those back in... Where did you grow up again?" I swallowed hard, feeling the lump in my throat. I grew up in Springfield, and I believe hard work and kindness can navigate any circle. "Springfield?" Helen echoed with a dismissive chuckle. "That's quaint." She sipped her wine, smirking over the rim of her glass. I set my mug down with more force than intended, causing the contents to slosh over the edge. Luke winced. "Excuse me," I said, and left the table, heading for the kitchen. The humiliation was unbearable. I needed a moment to collect myself before I said something I'd regret. In the kitchen, I leaned against the counter, staring blankly at the marble surface. The memories of my struggles rushed back, working double shifts right after high school to support my family, my mom's hospital bills, the bills piling up, the sacrifices. Was this all my life would amount to? Continually being judged for circumstances beyond my control? "Aaron?" Luke's voice broke my thoughts. I turned to see him standing in the doorway, hands in his pockets. Concern etched his features, but I couldn't ignore the frustration behind his eyes. "Why didn't you defend me?" I asked softly, barely keeping my voice steady. Luke sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Aaron, I'm sorry. You know how my mother is. She's set in her ways." I crossed my arms, the knot in my stomach tightening. "That's no excuse, Luke. If we're a team, we need to support each other, especially in moments like this." "I know, believe me, but she's my mother, Aaron. It's complicated." Complicated. That word resounded in our relationship far too often. Still, I loved Luke, and I believed we could navigate these stormy waters together. "Let's get through dinner, then we'll talk," I said, determined to regain my composure. We returned to the dining room. Helen's eyes sparkled with a mix of triumph and curiosity, but I refused to let her win. I could feel the weight of the future pressing down on us, but one thing was clear. I wasn't backing down. With this resolve, I took my seat, lifting my fork with a steady hand. "Shall we continue?" I asked, meeting Helen's gaze head-on. The air crackled with unresolved tension, but beneath it, a fire burned bright within me. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready. Moving in with Helen was Luke's idea. "For her health," he said. The irony wasn't lost on me. The house, an old colonial mansion, loomed over us as we lugged my suitcases through its grand doorway. "Welcome home," Helen said with a tight-lipped smile. Her eyes flicked to my suitcase. "I see you've brought everything?" "Thanks for having me, Mrs. Bradley," I said, forcing a smile. As soon as Luke left for work, Helen's true colors showed. Here, she said, handing me a list. These are the chores for today. The floors won't clean themselves. I stared at her, bewildered. But you have a housekeeper. She's off today. And since you don't have a job, keep yourself busy, she said, her tone dripping with condescension. Resigned, I took the list and started cleaning. The vacuum roared to life, drowning out my simmering frustration. Scrubbing the marble countertops, I reminded myself this was just temporary until Helen's health stabilized, or so I hoped. By evening, Luke returned, his tie askew, weariness etched on his face. "How was your day?" he asked, pecking me on the cheek. "Busy," I replied, glancing at Helen, who sat perched in her armchair, smug satisfaction oozing from her demeanor. "Well, I'm glad you're here to help," Luke said, oblivious to the silent war raging between his mother and me. Days turned into weeks, and Helen's subtle disdain became increasingly blatant. "Erin, could you not make dinner tonight? I'm sure Luke would prefer something edible," she said one evening, eyeing the roast I'd prepared. Luke looked up from his plate, his brow furrowing. "Mom, that's not fair. Erin's roast is fine." "Fine?" Helen laughed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Bless your heart, Luke. You've lowered your standards." I met Luke's eyes, searching for backup. He shrugged, defeated. "Maybe we should order in," he suggested quietly. The next few weeks followed a similar pattern. Helen's demands grew, her insults sharper. Yet Luke remained disconcertingly neutral, too disengaged or too fearful to stand up against her. One afternoon, I found Helen in Luke's office on the phone. "Yes, we'll add the new accounts under Luke's name," she said, not noticing me. My chest tightened at the realization. She was setting up financial plans, excluding me entirely. "Everything all right?" I asked, forcing cheerfulness into my voice when she hung up. Helen spun around, her expression hardening. "Don't you have something to do, Erin?" She snapped, shooing me away like a pesky fly. Later, Luke and I were in our bedroom when I brought it up. "Luke, why does your mom keep financial information from me? Shouldn't we be making decisions together?" Luke sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Erin, Mom likes control. She's always managed the finances. It's easier this way." "Easier for who?" I countered, frustration evident. "We're married. We should be a team." Luke looked at me, a shadow of guilt crossing his features. "I'll talk to her, okay? Just give it time." Time, it seemed, was all I had. Each day felt like walking on eggshells, Helen's shadow looming over every corner of the house. And Luke, too entangled in his mother's demands, barely seemed to notice the growing chasm between us. One evening, after yet another heated argument about household chores, Helen cornered me in the kitchen. "You really think you can come into my home and change things?" she said, her voice low and threatening. "I'm not trying to change anything," I replied, my voice unwavering. "Just trying to live here with some respect." "Respect?" Helen sneered. "You'll never have it here. Remember your place, Erin, or you might find yourself misplaced." As she left the kitchen, I felt a cold resolve harden within me. Living under Helen's shadow was suffocating, but I wouldn't back down. I was more determined than ever to find a way to stand my ground. One morning I woke to find Luke buzzing with excitement. "Erin, you won't believe it," he said, his eyes shining. "What is it?" I asked, trying to match his enthusiasm. "Mom and I are planning a trip to New Orleans next month. It's always been her dream to visit, and she's finally feeling well enough," he said, his joy palpable. I paused, confused. "That sounds wonderful, Luke. But what about me?" Luke's smile faltered. "It's just a mother-son trip. You understand, right?" Before I could respond, Helen waltzed into the room, her face aglow with satisfaction. "Isn't it marvelous, Erin? Luke and I are finally getting some quality time together. We've been planning this for ages." I glanced at Luke, hoping for some semblance of acknowledgement. Instead, he looked to Helen, then back to me, beaming. "It's going to be great." My throat tightened. "Sounds nice," I managed to say, forcing a smile. They were dismissing me like an afterthought. As they talked about their itinerary, I busied myself in the kitchen, feeling more sidelined with each passing minute. That evening, as Luke and I settled into bed, I broached the subject again. "Luke, why wasn't I included in the trip plans?" He turned to face me, looking weary. "Erin, Mom really needs this. She's been through a lot. Can't you understand?" "It's not about understanding. It's about being left out," I said, my voice trembling. "We're married. Shouldn't we be doing things together?" "Don't make this about you," he snapped. This trip is for her health and happiness, not about some slight against you. I pulled the covers up, feeling the sting of his words. Fine, I whispered, turning my back to him. The next day, Helen's requests grew even more demanding. Aaron, could you handle these bills? And make sure you organize Luke's files, she said, handing me a towering stack of folders. I took them without a word. As I went through the bills, I noticed several extravagant charges, clothing, dining, and other luxuries charged under my name. My frustration mounted. It was like Helen was deliberately trying to sabotage me. That evening, I confronted Luke. We need to talk about these charges, Luke. They're all in my name. He frowned. Mom has been handling those. I'm sure there's an explanation. There better be, because this can't continue, I said, handing him the bills. Luke skimmed through them, his face tightening. I'll speak to her, he promised, but his tone lacked conviction. It was clear Helen had woven a web of control around us, and Luke was ensnared. Desperate for some clarity, I began documenting every unreasonable demand and insult from Helen. I needed evidence to keep my sanity in check. The tension reached a boiling point a week later. Helen asked me to clean the entire house for a gathering of her friends. I spent hours scrubbing, dusting, and arranging, only to find out Helen had taken all the credit for my work. Wonderful job, Helen. Your place looks immaculate, one of her friends said, casting a fleeting glance my way. Helen smiled graciously. Thank you. It's a lot of effort, but worth it to keep a lovely home. My blood boiled. After they left, I approached Helen. Why didn't you tell them I did the cleaning? Helen's eyes narrowed. You should be grateful you're here at all. Stop expecting praise for doing the basics. This was too much. When Luke came home, I confronted him. We need to talk. Not now, Aaron. I've had a long day, he sighed, brushing past me. No, we talk now, I insisted, blocking his path. You need to see what your mother's doing to us. Aaron, enough, he exploded. She's my mother. Stop making everything about you. His words were the last straw. I can't live like this anymore, Luke. Either she goes or I do. Helen appeared at the door, her face a mask of innocence. Is everything all right? I looked between them, feeling utterly betrayed. I'm leaving, I declared, my voice resolute, and with that I walked out, not looking back. I never thought I would return to the Bradley house, but fate had different plans. Aaron, please. We need to talk. Luke had pleaded over the phone. Back in the mansion, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Helen's gaze was cold, calculating. Luke paced the living room, running his hands through his hair, clearly distraught. Why did you want me here, Luke? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Look, I know things have been tough, he began, avoiding my eyes, but I need you to understand the pressure I'm under, with Mom's health and the debts. Debts? I interrupted, my eyes narrowing. Helen shot Luke a look that could kill, but Luke continued. Our finances aren't what they seemed. The accounts are in a mess, credit cards maxed out. And you want me to help? I said, incredulous. After everything she's put me through? Helen stood abruptly, her voice sharp. You think you're so innocent, Aaron? You've been nothing but trouble. Always playing the victim. I felt a surge of anger. Victim? You've undermined me at every turn, treated me like an outsider in my own home. Helen's lips curled into a sneer. Poor Aaron, always the martyr. Why don't you just admit you're not cut out for this life? You're a burden, plain and simple. I took a step forward, determination hardening in my chest. I'm done with this. I'm not here to bail you out. If you want to settle this, do it through a divorce. Luke's face crumpled. Aaron, please, I love you. Can't we work something out? Helen scoffed, her disdain palpable. Don't be pathetic, Luke. She's always been after your money. Now she's just proving it. I turned to leave, but something in Luke's defeated posture stopped me. I'm willing to settle things fairly, I said, my voice softer. We can arrange a divorce agreement that clears the debts you've saddled me with, but I'm not your lifeline anymore. A week later, we met with our lawyers. Helen tried to play the innocent card, turning on the waterworks, but I had my documentation ready. Every unfair demand, every insult, every deceitful transaction in my name. As the details came to light, Helen's face turned pale. This is preposterous, she shouted. You can't prove any of this. My lawyer laid out the evidence calmly, efficiently. Helen's manipulative tactics, her financial abuses, they all painted a clear picture. Luke's lawyer looked increasingly uncomfortable. Mrs. Bradley, I think it's best if you remain silent, he suggested. Luke was visibly shaken. Mom, did you do all this? Helen glared at him. Don't act so surprised. We did what we had to for this family. She's the one trying to ruin us. Luke looked at me, his expression a mix of regret and sorrow. Aaron, I never wanted it to come to this. And yet, here we are, I said, my voice steady. This is the only way to move forward. The divorce agreement was signed, papers were exchanged. Helen was ordered to repay the debts incurred under my name, a sum that would take her years to settle. As we left the courtroom, Helen's proud facade cracked. You think you've won? She spat. You'll regret this. No, Helen, I replied, feeling a heavy weight lift from my shoulders. I'm finally free. Returning home, I felt a sense of liberation. I began focusing on my career, pouring my energy into something that truly mattered. The toxic influence of Helen and the mess of my past faded with each passing day. It wasn't immediate, but gradually I rebuilt my life, meeting old friends, reconnecting with my family, finding joy in simple pleasures. Each step was a victory, a reclaiming of my spirit from the shadows that had once threatened to consume it. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. And I knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one defined by strength, resilience, and the knowledge that I would never again let anyone undermine my worth. It had been a few months since the divorce, and life had started to look up for me. My mentor, David Hargrove, had reached out with an unexpected offer over coffee one day. Aaron, there's an opportunity at my startup. We could really use someone with your tenacity and drive. I agreed immediately. Throwing myself into work was a welcome distraction from the chaos that had been my marriage. David was a guiding force, helping me navigate the corporate landscape. His encouragement rekindled a fire within me. One evening, after a particularly successful meeting, David pulled me aside. You have a sharp mind for this business. Ever thought about starting your own company? The idea had crossed my mind before, but I always lacked the confidence. Now, with David's trust and my newfound freedom, it felt possible. I have, I admitted, smiling. Then do it, he said, his eyes gleaming. I'll back you. I threw myself into the challenge. Late nights, early mornings, countless meetings. It was exhausting, but empowering. Within a year, my startup was not just surviving, it was thriving. We secured partnerships, expanded our client base, and soon I was running a successful company. One evening, while I was going through some paperwork, my phone buzzed. A message from a mutual friend, Jessica Clark. It read, Heard about Helen's financial troubles. Seems she's dragging Luke down with her. I frowned, conflicted emotions swirling. Helen had reaped what she sowed, and Luke, part of me still cared for him, despite everything. Weeks later, I decided to buy a home in a picturesque city, bringing my parents to live with me. It felt right, providing for those who had supported me through thick and thin. At a housewarming party, Jessica approached me, holding a glass of champagne. This place is amazing, Aaron. You've come a long way. Thanks, Jessica. It's been a journey, I said, glancing at my parents who were now mingling happily with guests. Have you heard about Luke and Helen? She asked. Only bits, I responded cautiously. They're in deep trouble. Helen's debts are out of control, and Luke's struggling to keep up. I sighed, a mix of satisfaction and sorrow settling in. I guess karma finally caught up. Jessica nodded. You did what you had to. Don't feel guilty. As the evening wore on, I reflected on the journey, how I had risen from being undermined to reclaiming my worth and power. The sense of closure was profound. A few days later, an unfamiliar number flashed on my phone. I answered hesitantly. Hello. Aaron, it's Luke. I froze, surprised. What do you want, Luke? He hesitated. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. Mom's debts it's destroyed us. I shouldn't have let it go this far. His words hit me like a whirlwind of past pain and unspoken apologies. You're right. You shouldn't have. But I've moved on, Luke. I support myself now, and I'm happy. I understand, he said, voice heavy with regret. Take care, Aaron. I hung up, staring out at the sunset from my backyard. The call felt like the final page of a chapter I had long since closed. I was determined to keep looking forward. Planning a well-deserved vacation with my parents, I felt lighter. We reminisced about old times, laughed, and enjoyed the evening together, knowing we had come a long way. The future looked bright, and I was ready to embrace it wholeheartedly. It was a quiet Saturday morning when my phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. "Hello? Aaron, it's Helen," a familiar, cold voice echoed through the line. I sat up straighter, caught off guard. "What do you want, Helen?" Her voice wavered, an unusual tone of desperation creeping in. "I need your help. Luke and we're in trouble, financially." I took a deep breath, letting her words sink in. Part of me felt satisfaction, but another part recognized the gravity of the situation. "Why should I help you after everything you've done to me?" "Please, Aaron," she pleaded, her usual arrogance stripped away. "We're desperate." I rubbed my temple, feeling the weight of my emotions. "Where do you want to meet?" An hour later, I found myself at a small, nondescript cafe. Helen and Luke were already seated, looking exhausted and defeated. Helen's eyes were bloodshot, and Luke's face was gaunt, a far cry from the confident man I once knew. "Aaron," Luke said quietly as I approached. I sat down, avoiding their gaze. "Talk," I demanded. Helen leaned forward, clasping her hands together. "We've maxed out all our credit cards. The house is mortgaged to the hilt. We're about to lose everything." I looked at Luke, searching for some sign of the man I married. "And what do you expect me to do? Bail you out?" Helen bristled. "You owe us." "I owe you nothing," I interrupted sharply. "You treated me like dirt. You manipulated, lied, and showed me nothing but contempt." Luke winced. "Aaron, please, we're sinking." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "You know what? I'll make you an offer, but it's on my terms." Helen's eyes narrowed suspiciously, but she remained silent. "We settle this fairly," I continued. "Through a straightforward divorce agreement. No more debts on my name, and you," I pointed at Helen, "pay back everything you owe me." Helen looked ready to protest, but Luke placed a hand on her arm. "Agreed," he said, his voice cracking. I nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief. "Then I'm done here." The next few weeks were a blur of meetings with lawyers, signing documents, and tying up loose ends. The divorce agreement was clear. Helen would repay her debts to me, and I would have no more financial ties to the Bradleys. A week after the final papers were signed, I received a call from Helen. "You think you've won, don't you?" she spat through the phone. "Mark my words, Aaron. You'll regret this." I sighed, feeling the last remnants of anger dissolve. "Helen, I don't care about winning. I care about moving on. Goodbye." For the first time in years, I felt free. My life was no longer entangled in their toxic web. Back at home, I poured a glass of wine and stepped out onto my balcony, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The future felt wide open, full of possibilities. Mom walked out to join me, a warm smile on her face. "You've come so far, Aaron. I'm proud of you." I hugged her tightly. "Thanks, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you." We stood there in silence, the cool evening air wrapping around us, a peaceful end to a tumultuous chapter. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace, ready for whatever came next. Stepping into the courthouse for the divorce proceedings felt like entering the lion's den. Helen was already there, flanked by her lawyer, her face a mask of resentment. Luke stood nearby, looking more like a ghost than a man. "Aaron," he greeted with a weak nod, avoiding my eyes. I kept my gaze steady. "Let's get this over with." The hearing was straightforward. My lawyer presented the evidence. Helen's manipulative tactics, her hidden debts, and the financial transactions under my name. Helen shrank under the scrutiny, her carefully constructed facade crumbling bit by bit. As we neared the end of the hearing, my lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, we'd like to call attention to the financial abuses perpetrated by Mrs. Bradley. These documents clearly show her reckless spending and deceitful actions." Helen's lawyer looked frantic. "Your Honor, we object to the characterization of my client as deceitful. She acted in what she believed was the best interest of her family." I leaned over to my lawyer and whispered, "I need to speak." He nodded, rising to address the judge. "Your Honor, my client, Aaron Parker, wishes to make a statement." The judge motioned for me to proceed. I stood, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "Your Honor, my time with the Bradleys was dominated by manipulation and deceit. Helen Bradley undermined me at every turn, placing debts under my name without my consent. This divorce isn't just about ending a marriage, it's about reclaiming my life and my financial independence." The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. Helen's face was a mix of anger and desperation, but she remained silent. The judge cleared his throat. "Given the evidence presented, it's clear that Mrs. Helen Bradley engaged in financially abusive behavior. The court orders that all debts incurred in Aaron Parker's name be transferred back to Helen Bradley. Furthermore, Helen Bradley is to repay Aaron Parker for the financial damages and emotional distress caused. I allowed myself a small sigh of relief. Justice, it seemed, had finally been served. The judge banged his gavel, signaling the end of the hearing. Luke approached me, his eyes filled with regret. "Aaron, I'm sorry. I didn't know how bad it had gotten." "Sorry? Your blindness and loyalty to your mother cost me dearly, Luke. This isn't just on her, it's on you too." He nodded, tears welling up. "I know, I'm paying for it now." Helen stormed past us, her lawyer struggling to keep up. "This isn't over," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "For me, it is," I replied coolly. Leaving the courthouse, I felt an enormous weight lift off my shoulders. It was finally over. My lawyer patted my shoulder. "You handled that well, Aaron." "Thanks," I replied. "I couldn't have done it without your support." Back at home, I was greeted by my parents' proud faces. "How did it go?" my father asked, hugging me tightly. "It's done," I said, my voice filled with relief. "Helen has to repay everything, and I'm free." That evening, I celebrated with close friends and family. As we toasted to new beginnings, I felt a surge of hope and optimism for the future. This ordeal had tested my strength, but it had also revealed a resilience I didn't know I possessed. The following weeks, I ensured that all financial matters were appropriately transferred back. Helen's fall from grace was swift and public. Friends and family cut ties with her, her deceit now laid bare for all to see. Meanwhile, I immersed myself in my growing business, the sense of freedom and accomplishment driving me forward. With the past firmly behind me, I looked ahead with renewed vigor, ready to embrace the opportunities and challenges that lay ahead. For the first time in a long time, the future felt bright and boundless, a testament to my journey from being undermined to reclaiming my worth and power. A year later, on a warm spring morning, I found myself sitting in my office, basking in the sunlight pouring through the windows. I had just wrapped up a successful meeting when my phone buzzed. It was Jessica. "Aaron, have you heard the latest about Helen?" Her voice crackled over the line. I leaned back in my chair, curiosity piqued. "No, what's happened now?" "She's hit rock bottom. Apparently she lost the house, and Luke's barely scraping by." A mixture of emotions swirled within me, but I settled on a calm acceptance. "Well, karma has a funny way of catching up, doesn't it? You've come so far, Aaron. I'm so proud of you," Jessica said warmly. "Thanks, Jess. It hasn't been easy, but I'm finally in a good place." After hanging up, I walked over to the window, looking out at the vibrant city below. The trials and tribulations of the past seemed like a distant memory now. I was thriving, both personally and professionally. That evening, I hosted a small get-together at my new home. My parents were there, along with close friends like Jessica. As we gathered around the dining table, laughter and chatter filled the room. "To new beginnings," my father said, raising his glass. "To resilience and redemption," I added, clinking my glass with the others. The next day, I decided to take a much-deserved vacation with my parents. We planned to visit a quaint seaside town, a place I'd always dreamed of seeing. The anticipation filled me with a childlike excitement. On the day of our departure, as I packed the last of our bags, my mother walked in, a proud smile on her face. "I can't tell you how happy I am to see you like this, Aaron. You're a true inspiration." I hugged her tightly. "Thank you, Mom. I couldn't have done it without your love and support." As we drove to the airport, I reflected on the journey I had been on. From the oppressive days in Helen's shadow to standing tall and reclaiming my life, it felt like stepping out of darkness into the light. The seaside town was more beautiful than I had imagined. We spent our days exploring the beach, enjoying fresh seafood, and simply savoring each other's company. One evening, as we walked along the shoreline, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I felt a profound sense of peace. "Aaron, remember this moment," my father said, his arm around my shoulders. "You've earned it." "I will, Dad," I promised, feeling the waves lap at my feet. Back at home after our trip, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Luke. I hesitated for a moment before opening it. "Aaron, I hope this letter finds you well. I wanted to take a moment to apologize once more for everything. Losing everything has made me realize the immense mistakes I made. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I now understand what you went through. I wish you all the best." Luke? I folded the letter and put it away, feeling a strange sense of closure. The acknowledgement of his wrongdoings was enough for me. With each passing day, life continued to bloom with new opportunities and meaningful connections. I reconnected with old friends, built stronger family bonds, and thrived in my business. As I planned the next adventure with my parents, I realized that this journey wasn't just about overcoming obstacles. It was about finding joy, peace, and fulfillment. And in that moment, I knew I had not only reclaimed my worth, but had also discovered the profound strength within me to create a life of my own design. Mia, I never loved you. If you leave me quietly, Lizzie and I can have the life we always wanted, with our baby. Alex's words echoed around the living room, hitting me hard. I stared at him, unable to process the scene. Lizzie stood beside him, clutching a baby to her chest. Suddenly, all the doubts and suspicions I'd shoved deep down came rushing back. I forced myself to stay calm. You what? I realized I never stopped loving Lizzie. We deserved to be a family. His voice was steady, as if he'd rehearsed this speech 100 times. Lizzie looked at me with an almost pitying expression, but her eyes held a hint of triumph. I knew any reaction they expected would be for me to cry or beg, but that wasn't going to happen. Fine, I said coldly, my tone surprising even myself. I agree to the divorce. Alex seemed taken aback by my quick acceptance. Are you sure? It's for the best, Mia. Yes, I'm sure. I turned and walked to the kitchen, needing a moment of solitude. The implications of their betrayal washed over me like icy water, but I couldn't let them see me falter. I had to play it smart. Later that night, as I sat at the dining table, I heard soft murmurs from the living room. Alex and Lizzie, discussing their future, no doubt. I leaned back in my chair, planning my next move. I entered the living room. Where are you planning to go? We'll stay here until we find another place, Alex said casually, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Until the divorce is finalized, of course, Lizzie added, giving her baby's hand a little squeeze. Staring at them, my resolve hardened. All right, but I want the settlement finalized quickly. I won't drag this out. Alex nodded, a slight smirk playing on his lips. That's fair. His arrogance only fueled my determination. Lizzie started to speak, but I cut her off. Don't misunderstand me, Lizzie. This isn't forgiveness. This is just me removing obstacles that are no longer worth my time. Her face paled, and I felt a flicker of satisfaction. I left the room, their conversations turning into hushed whispers behind me. My mind raced with future conversations and the plans I needed to set in motion. They thought they had won, but they had no idea what was coming. The next morning, Helen, Alex's mother, called. Mia, dear, I heard about everything. Are you all right? I'm fine, Helen. Thanks for asking. I lied smoothly. Well, what did you expect? You couldn't give Alex a child, she said, the judgment clear in her voice. It takes two, Helen, I replied, forcing a smile I didn't feel. After the call, I grabbed my keys and headed out. I needed to see a lawyer and start gathering evidence. Every step needed to be precise. At the law office, Mr. Haynes, my lawyer, greeted me. Mia, what brings you in today? I need to file for divorce, I stated, a calm I didn't quite feel washing over my words. He looked up, concern in his eyes, and nodded. We'll get started immediately. Any terms you have in mind? Yes, I said. I want a significant settlement for their infidelity. They don't get to take everything from me and walk away unscathed. Understood, he replied, jotting down notes. We'll start the paperwork today. As I left the office, I took a deep breath. This was only the beginning. My actions now would shape the rest of my life. Though shaken by betrayal, I knew one thing for sure. They wouldn't get away with this. The game was just beginning. Helen's relentless voice echoed through my thoughts as I drove back home. Her constant pressure about grandchildren had worn me down over the years. She never missed a chance to remind me time was ticking. Mia, when are you two giving me a grandchild? Time is running out, she'd nag during every family gathering. It was a never-ending cycle, and Alex always seemed oblivious to my growing frustration. One evening, after another exasperating call from Helen, I confronted Alex. Your mother is driving me crazy, Alex. We need to get tested. Maybe there's something wrong. Alex waved me off. There's no need. We'll have a child when it's meant to be. But I couldn't shake off the doubt. So I decided to take matters into my own hands and scheduled a fertility test without telling him. Sitting in Dr. Emily Carter's office, I felt a knot in my stomach. She walked in with a calm smile, holding my results in her hand. "Your tests came back normal, Mia. There's no reason you can't have children." Relief washed over me, but it quickly shifted to confusion. "If I'm fine, then what is Alex hiding?" Dr. Carter's eyes were gentle. "Sometimes it's best to communicate openly with your partner." I thanked her and left, but the questions gnawed at me. Back home, I watched Alex move around the house. He was distant, more so than usual, and Helen's words replayed in my mind. "Why did Alex marry you, Mia? He could have had a young, fertile wife like Lizzie." That night, I broached the subject again. "Alex, we need to talk about seeing a specialist. It's been years and nothing's happening." He sighed heavily. "I'm tired of talking about babies. Let's drop it." "Why are you avoiding this?" I pressed, my patience wearing thin. "Because I'm done discussing it," he snapped, his face contorted with anger. The next few weeks, Alex became even more aloof. He'd come home late, avoid conversations, and his temper grew short. One night, his anger boiled over. "If I'd known you couldn't have kids, I never would have married you," he yelled. His words stung, but more than that, they planted a seed of doubt about everything he'd ever said. Could it be that he was the one with issues? The situation became unbearable. Alex's irritability, Helen's nagging. I felt cornered and alone in my own home. That's when I made an appointment for Alex, without his knowledge. There was no choice left. But before I could even think of how to get him there, he dropped the bombshell with Lizzie and their baby. The test results became irrelevant. This betrayal was personal, a cut much deeper. Seeing them together now, picturing all the lies, I felt a fire burning within me. This wasn't just about children anymore. This was about everything they had taken and everything they would pay for. I looked at Lizzie, holding the child that was supposed to bind our lives forever. In their twisted game, they pushed me into a corner, but they forgot one thing. I wasn't someone who gave up. Alex and Lizzie thought they had everything figured out. They couldn't have been more wrong. Each word, each look, each lie, they were only fueling the storm that was about to hit them. This was just the beginning. My plans were set in motion, and soon they would understand the gravity of their betrayal. I sat outside Dr. Emily Carter's office, clutching the report. The words from our last appointment ran through my mind. "Your tests came back normal, Mia. There's no reason you can't have children." A mix of anger and determination surged within me. If I was fine, then something else had to be wrong. Something Alex was hiding. Back home, I brushed past Alex and Lizzie, who were deep in conversation about their new life. I shut the door to our bedroom and called a private investigator. "I need your help," I said firmly. "I want to find out everything about my husband, his ex-girlfriend, and their so-called family." The investigator agreed, and we made plans to meet the next day. I hung up, feeling a sense of control returning. I would uncover their lies, thread by thread. The following week, I discreetly received updates from the investigator. "Alex has been meeting Lizzie for over a year," he said over the phone. "There are gaps in Lizzie's story. Something doesn't add up." I thanked him and ended the call, deep in thought. If they'd been meeting for a year, the timeline of their baby didn't fit. Lizzie's daughter was barely a few months old. Alex's voice interrupted my thoughts. "Mia, you seem distant." I turned to face him, masking my emotions. "Just processing everything you dumped on me," I replied coldly. "We can all share the house amicably until the divorce is finalized," he said, trying to sound reasonable. "Sure, Alex. Just don't expect us to be friends." He nodded, seemingly content. It was almost laughable how clueless he was. Days turned into weeks, and Lizzie grew more comfortable in my home, acting like she owned the place. It was infuriating, but I kept my cool, knowing the secrets I held would soon break them. One evening, as Lizzie fed her baby in the living room, I approached her. "How old is your daughter, Lizzie?" I asked casually. 3 months, she replied, her eyes slightly wary. I nodded. "Interesting. Must have been a surprise, huh?" Lizzie's hesitation didn't escape me. "Yes, it was," she finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. That night I cornered Alex as he watched TV. "Alex, I want you to come with me to a fertility specialist. I have an appointment set up." He shifted uncomfortably. "Why? I thought you understood I'm done with this." "Because I need closure, Alex, for my peace of mind." He sighed. "Fine, but it won't change anything." That's all I ask, I responded, my heart racing. It was a gamble, but one I needed to take. We visited the clinic the next day. Dr. Smith, the specialist, welcomed us. Let's start with an initial consultation, she said. During the session, Alex seemed tense. Dr. Smith asked routine questions before suggesting some tests. Alex agreed reluctantly. A week later, I received a call from Dr. Smith. Mia, the results are in. Can you come by the office? I agreed, feeling apprehensive yet determined. When I arrived, Dr. Smith handed me the report. Alex's results show significant fertility issues. It's unlikely he could father a child naturally. My breath caught. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place. I thanked her and left, my mind racing. Lizzie's baby couldn't be Alex's. Now, I had the proof I needed to confront them. I drove back home, ready to expose their deception. As I parked and stepped out, a calm resolve settled over me. They had cornered me, underestimated me. But now the game was about to change. Everything they built on lies would soon crumble. Alex's behavior grew more hostile as the days passed. He began coming home late, the distance between us yawning wider with each passing evening. One night, after another pointless argument, he stormed out of the house. I watched through the window as he drove off, knowing exactly where he was going. The next morning, I woke up alone. It wasn't until later that afternoon I heard the door open and Alex's voice. Mia, we need to talk. I walked into the living room where Helen was already sitting, a look of disdain on her face. Alex stood there, his expression dark. Mia, I'm tired of all this. Let's drop the conversation about babies, he said angrily. Before I could respond, Helen chimed in. Why did Alex marry you, Mia? He could have had a young, fertile wife like Lizzie. My blood boiled, but I maintained a composed facade. Is that so, Helen? I didn't realize having children was the only reason to be married. Helen scoffed. Well, it's certainly an important one. Alex glared at me. Yeah, if I'd known you couldn't have kids, I never would have married you. I took a deep breath. Maybe we should discuss this in front of Lizzie, don't you think? Let's hear what she has to say about all of this. As if on cue, Lizzie walked into the room, cradling her baby. She looked between us, sensing the tension. What's going on? She asked. We need to clear some things up, I said, my voice steady. Alex, tell Lizzie what you just told me. Alex shifted uncomfortably. This isn't necessary, Mia. Oh, but it is, I replied, determination lacing my words. Lizzie, Alex thinks he never would have married me if he knew about my so-called infertility. But here we are, and you're both living under the same roof with your child. Lizzie looked taken aback. Mia, I never meant for things to turn out like this. Didn't you? I took a step closer. Your child is not Alex's, Lizzie. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Lizzie's face paled, but she quickly recovered. How can you be so sure? I held up the report from Dr. Smith. Alex is infertile, Lizzie. I had him tested. There's no way he could be the father. The room fell silent as the weight of my words sank in. Alex's face drained of color. What is she talking about, Lizzie? Lizzie broke under the pressure. It's true, the baby isn't yours. Alex, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it to come out like this. Helen gasped, her judgmental mask slipping. Wait, if you reconnected last year, how did Lizzie already have a baby? Alex looked devastated, his world collapsing around him. He stumbled back, his voice a whisper. You lied to me. Lizzie's eyes filled with tears. Yes, but only because I was scared to lose you. I watched the chaos unfold, a strange sense of satisfaction washing over me. The truth was out, and now they'd have to deal with the consequences of their actions. The room fell into a tense silence. Alex looked at me, a mix of anger and despair in his eyes. Mia, what have you done? I met his gaze evenly. I did what you forced me to do, Alex. Now all of you will face the outcome of your lies. With that, I walked out, leaving behind the shattered remains of their deceit. The plan was in motion, and there was no turning back now. I stared at the sprawling divorce papers spread across the kitchen table. Alex and Lizzie hadn't spoken much since the confrontation. Our home had become a battlefield of awkward silences and stolen glances. Today, I decided to make my next move. I called out to them. Alex, Lizzie, can you both join me in the kitchen? They appeared moments later, Lizzie holding her baby while Alex trailed behind looking disheveled. I have something important to discuss, I began, pointing to the papers. I want a divorce settlement, a hefty one. Alex scoffed. You've got to be kidding me. We're raising a child. How do you expect us to pay you? I crossed my arms. That's not my concern. You both betrayed me. The least you can do is pay for what you did. Lizzie's face flushed. You're extorting us while we're raising a baby? Have some decency, Mia. Decency? I echoed, incredulous. Did you think about decency when you moved into my home with your lies? Alex ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. What's your price? Enough to start a new life, I replied coolly. We can negotiate the exact number, but it needs to be substantial. He shook his head. You're ruining us, Mia. We don't have that kind of money. Then figure it out, I said sharply. You didn't seem to worry about the consequences when you decided to betray me. Do we have a choice? Lizzie asked Alex, her tone resigned. No, I said, answering for him. You don't. It's either this or a prolonged legal battle that will cost you even more. You win, Mia, Alex muttered, defeated. We'll pay what you want. Just give us some time. I nodded. Good. Get the funds together and we'll have the settlement drawn up. Until then, I'll start piecing together your betrayal. They left the kitchen without another word, the weight of their predicament sinking in. I watched them retreat, a cold satisfaction growing within me. They had thrown me aside like I was nothing, but now they were beginning to understand the price of their deception. Over the next few days, I meticulously went through Alex's documents and Lizzie's timeline. Each inconsistency added to my resolve. Helen, who had been unusually quiet since the revelation about Lizzie's baby, made a rare appearance at the house one afternoon. She cornered me in the hallway. Mia, this is madness. You're tearing this family apart. This family? I laughed bitterly. Did you stop to think about that when you treated me like dirt, Helen? Her eyes narrowed. You're just bitter because you can't have children. And I stepped closer, keeping my voice low but firm. The only thing I'm bitter about is the betrayal and lies. Maybe it's time you open your eyes to the people you so blindly support. Helen bristled but had no comeback. She left, her footsteps echoing through the empty halls. I knew this was only the beginning. The settlement would just be the first step in my plan. They would learn the hard way that the price of betrayal was steep and unforgiving. So far, everything was playing out perfectly. Each day brought me closer to the freedom and justice I sought. I wasn't just surviving, I was reclaiming my life, piece by piece. As the days turned into weeks, I prepared for the next phase, confident that neither Alex nor Lizzie could escape the fate they had set into motion. For once I felt a sense of control, a sense of peace, knowing that their actions had finally caught up with them. The day of the confrontation had arrived. Helen, Alex, Lizzie, and I gathered in the living room. My heart pounded, but my resolve was firm. The air was thick with tension as I placed the fertility report on the coffee table for all to see. I think it's time we clear the air, I began, my voice steady. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of accusations. Today we settle everything. What is this about, Mia? Helen asked, her eyes narrowing. I pointed to the report. Helen, here's my fertility report. No issues. So tell me, Alex, whose child is this really? Alex squirmed in his seat. We've been over this, Mia. The baby is mine. I shook my head slowly. The tests say otherwise, Alex. You're infertile. A heavy silence fell over the room. Helen looked shocked, her face paling. What are you saying? I'm saying that Alex cannot have children, which means Lizzie's baby isn't his. They've both been lying to us. I turned to Lizzie, my gaze unwavering. Why don't you explain? Lizzie's face turned red, and she shifted uncomfortably, cradling her baby protectively. Mia, this isn't the time. Oh, but it is, I interrupted. This is exactly the right time. Helen's eyes darted between us, realization dawning. Wait, if you reconnected last year, how did Lizzie already have a baby? Alex's face twisted with anger. What are you talking about, Mia? What is this nonsense? I met his gaze head on. It's not nonsense, Alex. The dates don't add up. Lizzie, when did you and Alex reconnect? Lizzie clammed up, clearly struggling with her lies unraveling. A year ago, she whispered. So, if the baby is 3 months old, I said, stepping closer, that means she was pregnant long before you reconnected. Alex turned to Lizzie, his face a mixture of confusion and rage. Is this true, Lizzie? Lizzie broke, tears streaming down her face. Alex, I'm sorry. Yes, it's true. The baby isn't yours. Helen gasped, clutching her chest. You lied to us all, Lizzie? Alex's world crumbled. He looked at Lizzie, his eyes filled with betrayal. You deceived me. Lizzie tried to speak, but Alex cut her off. How could you? How could you do this to me? Lizzie sobbed, her voice breaking. I was scared, Alex. I thought I'd lose you again. I didn't know what else to do. I watched, a strange sense of satisfaction washing over me. The truth was out, and they were facing the consequences of their deceit. Helen, still in shock, looked at Alex. You brought this into our lives, Alex? You ruined everything. Alex's face was a mask of despair and fury. Mia, can we fix this? Can we start over? I shook my head, my voice cold. No, Alex, you betrayed me. There's no going back from this. Lizzie looked at me, her face streaked with tears. Mia, I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix what you've done, I replied. You both made your choices. Now live with them. I turned and walked out of the living room, leaving them to deal with the wreckage of their lies. The plan was in motion, and the seeds of karma had been sowed. All that remained was to watch them reap what they had sown. The scene in the living room was tense. Alex sat on one end, his head in his hands, while Lizzie stood nearby, teary-eyed and shaking. Helen hovered by the door, her face a mixture of rage and confusion. Mia, Alex began, looking up at me with desperate eyes, we need to understand everything. When did all this start? I crossed my arms, remembering every painful detail. Lizzie, why don't you tell us? When exactly did you and Alex reconnect? Lizzie's voice was barely a whisper. It was last year. We met at a friend's wedding. I nodded, my voice cold. And the baby? When did you find out you were pregnant? Months after, she admitted, avoiding Alex's glare. A year ago. So you admit the child isn't Alex's? I pushed. Lizzie crumbled. Yes, she isn't his. I'm so sorry, Alex. Helen, unable to hold back any longer, exploded. How could you deceive us like this? You've brought shame and chaos into our family. Lizzie's sobs grew louder, but my focus turned to Alex. You see, Alex? All the lies, the deceit, it's all coming back to haunt you. You could have spared yourself this devastation if you'd been truthful from the start. Alex stood up abruptly, rage replacing his earlier despair. You knew, didn't you? He snarled at Lizzie. You knew the whole time you were lying to me. Lizzie's tears fell freely. I was scared, Alex. I thought if you knew the truth, you'd leave me again. I wanted us to be a family. Alex's fury turned into a cutting laugh. A family built on lies, Lizzie? What kind of family did you think that would be? Helen stepped closer to Alex, her voice icy. I supported you, Alex. I defended you. And for what? To find out you couldn't even tell your wife the truth about your own problems. Alex glanced at Helen, guilt and regret clouding his features. He then faced me. Mia, please, there has to be a way to fix this. We were good once. We could be good again. I shook my head. No, Alex, you've shattered too much for that. Our trust, our life, it's all broken. There's no going back. Helen's voice rang out, sharp and unforgiving. You both will deal with the mess you've created. Don't expect any help from me. I won't support this betrayal. Lizzie looked stricken. Helen, please, we need you. Helen's face hardened. You've made your bed, Lizzie. Now lie in it. I watched the scene unfold, a sense of resolute finality filling the room. Their lies had spun out of control, and the consequences were clear now. There was no room for reconciliation or forgiveness here. As I turned to leave, Alex called out one last time. Mia, can't we at least try to part on better terms? I stopped, my back still to him. Better terms? You made that impossible, Alex. I hope you find whatever it is you were looking for with Lizzie. But as for us, we're done. Without looking back, I walked out, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders with each step. The truth was a bitter pill, but now it was out in the open. They were left to confront the reality they had so desperately tried to hide. As the door closed behind me, I felt a sense of closure. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to forge. My life, my choices, my future, all finally free from the shadows of betrayal. As the days passed, Helen's demeanor toward Lizzie and Alex grew colder. She made her position clear, refusing to lend them any financial support. The atmosphere in the house was suffocating, and the once bustling home now felt like a graveyard of broken relationships. One afternoon, Alex approached me. Mia, can we talk? I looked up from my laptop, maintaining my composure. What is it, Alex? He sighed heavily, his face etched with desperation. Mia, can we reconcile? Can we fix this mess? I stood up, closing my laptop slowly, and met his eyes. No, Alex, you betrayed me in the worst way possible. There's no fixing this. But we were happy once, he insisted. I shook my head. You shattered that happiness. Now you have to live with the consequences. Enjoy your new life with Lizzie. If she stays. His face turned pale, and he slumped, defeated. I walked past him without another word, heading toward my car. It was time to truly move on. Over time, I filed the necessary paperwork for the divorce and the settlement. Alex and Lizzie struggled to scrape together the funds, facing financial strains without Helen's assistance. I could see the toll it was taking on both of them. Months later, I met Nathan Ford, a new coworker. He was kind, understanding, and had a way of making me laugh again. Our bond grew strong, and one evening as the sun set, he proposed to me. "Mia, you've been through so much, yet you've emerged stronger. Will you marry me?" Nathan held out a ring, his eyes filled with hope. Tears welled up in my eyes, but they were tears of joy. "Yes, Nathan, 1,000 times yes." We married in a small, intimate ceremony. For the first time in a long while, I felt genuine happiness. We built our lives together, and a year later, I gave birth to twins. Holding them in my arms, I felt a profound sense of completion. My life had come full circle. Back in the old neighborhood, Helen finally reached a breaking point. She severed all ties with Alex and Lizzie, leaving them to fend for themselves. They were forced to sell the house and moved into a modest apartment. Their new reality was a far cry from the life they had envisioned. I occasionally heard snippets about Alex and Lizzie from mutual acquaintances. Their relationship, built on lies, began to crumble under the weight of their own deceit. There were arguments, tears, and resentment. The life they thought they'd have was now a constant reminder of their betrayal. One day, while walking in the park with Nathan and our children, I spotted Alex sitting alone on a bench, looking lost. I approached him, a mix of pity and curiosity driving me. "Mia," he started, his voice soft and broken. "Can we talk?" I nodded, keeping Nathan and the kids within sight. "What is it, Alex?" "I didn't know it would turn out like this," he said, tears brimming. "I've lost everything." I sighed, feeling a pang of empathy. "Alex, choices have consequences. You made yours, now you live with them." He nodded, tears falling freely now. "I'm truly sorry, Mia, for everything." I offered a small, sad smile. "I hope you find a way to rebuild your life. Goodbye, Alex." I turned back to my family, feeling an overwhelming sense of relief and closure. As I walked away, hand in hand with Nathan, I knew I had finally left the past behind. The future was bright, filled with love and happiness. I looked at Nathan and our children, my heart swelling with gratitude. Life had tested me, but I had emerged stronger, and now I was ready for whatever came next. "You think you can ruin my life and get away with it? Watch me destroy everything you ever cared about." Those were the words I heard before everything went dark. When I came to, I was lying in a hospital bed. The sterile white walls and the beeping of machines around me were a blunt reminder that something had gone wrong. Terribly wrong. It was my wedding anniversary, and I had planned a perfect evening, but all I had now were fragments of what felt like a shattered dream. "Mommy, are you awake?" Lily's small voice broke through my grogginess. I turned to see my little girl clutching a worn-out teddy bear, her eyes wide with worry. "Hey, sweetie," I managed to say, my throat dry and scratchy. "What's going on?" Before she could answer, Matt entered the room, his face a mask of concern. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, but I pushed it aside, trying to focus on the present. "Ava, thank God you're awake," he said, rushing to my side. His hand felt cold when he took mine, an odd contrast to the warmth of his words. "You had an accident. Do you remember anything?" I searched my mind, struggling to piece together the last moments before I blacked out, but there was nothing except a vague sense of panic and his voice echoing in my mind. "No, I don't remember," I admitted, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. "Don't worry about it now," he said softly. "The doctors say you're going to be okay. You just need to rest." As he spoke, I noticed a flicker of something in his eyes. Was it guilt? Fear? I wasn't sure, but it made me wary. Days passed, and I was released from the hospital. Back home, I found it hard to settle back into my routine. The comfortable familiarity of our house felt strangely alien. I had hoped that Matt would be more attentive after the accident, but he was distant, always finding excuses to be away. Lily's innocent questions about my condition were the only things grounding me. One evening, I overheard Matt talking on the phone in hushed tones. "She doesn't suspect anything," he said, his voice a rough whisper. "We need to be more careful." I crept closer to the door, my heart racing. "Yeah, I know. She's still recovering." When he hung up, I confronted him. Matt, who were you talking to? He looked startled, then quickly composed himself. Just work stuff, Ava. You need to rest. But his dismissive answer did nothing to ease my mind. There was something he wasn't telling me, and I needed to find out what it was. Searching for answers, I started paying closer attention to Matt's behavior. His late nights at the office, the guarded way he spoke on the phone, and how he avoided eye contact. Each odd detail added to my growing suspicion. I missed you at the hospital, Becky, I said to my cousin a few days later, when she unexpectedly dropped by. She and Matt exchanged a quick glance before she responded. I'm so sorry, Ava. I wanted to be there, she replied, squeezing my hand a bit too firmly. It's fine, I said, though her smile didn't seem quite genuine. That night, my sleep was fitful. Fragments of conversations, half-hidden glances, and my own sense of dread swirled in my mind. My once perfect life seemed like a house of cards, ready to collapse at any moment. Dark clouds hovered over our anniversary party memory. I remembered dressed in my favorite red gown, the twinkling fairy lights, the taste of champagne, and then, nothing. I needed to know what happened. I couldn't rest until I did. The next morning, I approached Matt as he was getting ready for work. We need to talk, I said, determined. Ava, not now. I'm already late, he said, brushing past me. As he left, I caught sight of myself in the hallway mirror. The reflection staring back was a determined woman, ready to uncover the truth. The accident, Matt's strange behavior, and Becky's unease were all pieces of a puzzle I was determined to solve. If they thought they could get away with whatever they were hiding, they were sorely mistaken. The fight in me was reawakened. The whir of footsteps and hushed conversations around me filled the hospital room. I knew something was wrong, more than just my foggy memory. As the night deepened and Lily was finally asleep, I was left with my thoughts. I had to get to the bottom of this. It was around midnight when I heard voices outside my room. I recognized them immediately. Matt and Becky. I edged closer to the door, keeping it slightly ajar. She'll never know. Becky's voice was sharp, almost taunting. It's not like she would have noticed. She trusts you blindly. You don't understand, Becky, Matt snapped. She's starting to ask questions. We need to be careful. What's the big deal, Matt? You're her husband. She'll never suspect you. My breath hitched. The betrayal was much deeper than I had imagined. Heart pounding, I forced myself to stay calm. I needed to listen, to gather more. She doesn't remember anything from that night, Matt said, his voice lower now. As long as we keep our cool, she'll be none the wiser. We just have to stick to our story. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My husband and my cousin in cahoots, dismissing me like a pawn in their game. As anger bubbled up inside me, a sense of clarity washed over. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I played my part, pretending everything was fine. Matt, could you get me some water? I asked sweetly as he lingered by my bedside. Of course, Ava, he replied, masking his guilt behind a forced smile. As he left the room, I turned to Lily. Sweetie, why don't you go with Daddy? I'll be right here. Once alone, I dialed Jenna's number. She answered on the second ring. Jenna, I need your help. Something's wrong. I overheard Matt and Becky. They're hiding something from me. Jenna didn't ask any questions, simply said, I'm on my way. Within the hour, Jenna was at my side. Ava, are you sure about this? I've never been more certain, I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. I need to find out what they're hiding, and I need your help. Jenna nodded. We'll get to the bottom of this. Together, we hatched a plan. Jenna would start by following Becky, while I kept an eye on Matt's behavior. The idea of confronting them was shelved for now. Gathering evidence was priority. Jenna left just as Matt returned with Lily and a bottle of water. Here you go, babe, he said, leaning in to kiss my forehead. I forced myself to smile, determined not to let my anger show. Days turned into weeks, and with Jenna's help, we began piecing things together. Subtle patterns became clearer. Matt's late-night calls, Becky's frequent visits, and the whispers I wasn't supposed to hear. The more we uncovered, the more I realized the depth of their deceit. One evening, as I lay in bed, pretending to sleep, I heard Matt on the phone again. Yeah, she's still in the dark. Everything's going according to plan. Enough was enough. I couldn't pretend anymore, couldn't wait for more lies. The next morning when Matt left for work, Jenna and I met to discuss our findings. They're planning something bigger than just an affair, Jenna said, laying out the notes we had gathered. Financial assets, maybe? I nodded. I need concrete proof. We need to catch them red-handed. We agreed to hire a private investigator, someone who could dig deeper than we could. As I shook Jenna's hand, I felt a renewed sense of determination. Matt and Becky thought they could betray me and get away with it. They were wrong. Very wrong. The storm was just beginning, and I was ready to face it head-on. The crisp autumn air bit at my skin as I stepped out of the car. The downtown office building where Dave operated was unassuming, almost easy to miss. But I had done my homework. Dave came highly recommended, a private investigator with a reputation for uncovering hidden truths. As I entered his office, a small bell tinkled above the door. The room was cluttered with files, a testament to the secrets he had already unearthed. Dave looked up from behind his desk, his sharp eyes assessing me instantly. "Ava, right?" he greeted, standing to shake my hand. "Have a seat. Your friend Jenna told me you'd be coming." I sat down, gripping the edge of the chair. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice, Dave. I need your help. My husband and my cousin... They're hiding something from me, and it's serious." He nodded, pulling out a notepad. "Tell me everything you know so far." I recounted the conversation I had overheard, Matt's late-night calls and Becky's suspicious visits. Dave listened intently, scribbling notes without interrupting. When I finished, he looked up, his expression thoughtful. "Infidelity is bad enough, but it sounds like there's more at play here," he said. "You want me to dig into their activities and find concrete evidence?" "Yes," I said firmly. "I need every shred of dirt. Make sure it's damning." Dave's eyes gleamed with a mix of empathy and determination. "Consider it done. I'll start by tailing Matt and Becky, checking phone records, financial transactions. It might take some time, but I'll get you what you need." Relief washed over me. "Thank you, Dave. This means a lot to me." As I left his office, a renewed sense of purpose filled me. I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. Days turned into weeks. Dave kept me updated with brief phone calls, each time hinting that he was getting closer. My interactions with Matt were filled with a tense politeness, masking the storm of emotions within me. His obliviousness fueled my resolve. One evening, as I was reading Lily a bedtime story, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Dave. "Got something big. Meet tomorrow?" My heart pounded. "Yes. Same place?" "Yes. Noon," he replied. The next day, I arrived at Dave's office, trying to steady my nerves. He greeted me with a grim expression. "I've found something," he said, leading me to a chair. He handed me a file. "It's not enough for a legal confrontation yet, but it's a start." Inside the file were photos of Matt and Becky meeting at various locations. Financial documents highlighted suspicious withdrawals and transfers. It was a pattern, one that hinted at something much darker than an affair. "What do you make of this?" I asked, flipping through the pages. "They're laundering money through a fake investment scheme," Dave explained. "And if my sources are correct, they're planning to pin the blame on you." Rage coursed through me. "They're using me as a scapegoat?" Dave nodded, his face stern. "It looks that way, but don't worry, I'll keep digging. We need more solid evidence before we can go to the authorities." I clenched my fists. "Do whatever it takes. I want them to pay for this." As I left, Jenna called. "How did it go?" "Well," I said, filling her in on the details. "But we need more proof before we can strike." "We're in this together, Ava," she assured me. "Whatever you need." Hanging up, I felt a surge of determination. Matt and Becky had underestimated me. They thought they could ruin my life and get away with it. They were wrong. The first steps of my revenge were set in motion, and there was no turning back now. "I'm going to a conference out of town. I'll be back in a few days," I announced over breakfast. Matt barely looked up from his phone, mumbling an acknowledgement. Becky wasn't at the house today, which made it easier to plant the seeds of my plan. Lily, blissfully unaware of the tension, was excited. "Can I come with you, Mommy?" I put on my best reassuring smile. "Not this time, sweetheart. But I promise we'll have our own adventure soon." When Matt left for work, I got busy. I retrieved the small hidden camera from a drawer and carefully installed it in the living room. One in the kitchen, another in the bedroom, places they wouldn't think to check. The anticipation was almost electric. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a storm, ready to let it loose. After setting up everything, I called Jenna. "We're ready. I'm heading to my conference." Be safe, Ava, Jenna said, her voice filled with support. You've got this. I packed my bags, kissed Lily goodbye, and left the house, my heart pounding. I drove to a nearby hotel and checked in under a different name. Then I set up my laptop, connecting to the live feed from the cameras. Hours passed. My fingers drummed against the desk as I watched the empty rooms on the screen. The waiting was torture, but I knew this was the only way to catch them. Just when I began to wonder if this was all for nothing, movement flickered on the screen. Matt entered the living room, followed closely by Becky. Their faces were tense, lips drawn in tight lines. They sat close to each other, too close. We need to talk about the next step, Becky said, her voice cold. She's starting to get suspicious. As long as we stay calm, she won't find out, Matt responded. We just need to keep up appearances until everything is finalized. Becky scoffed. Appearances won't matter if she finds out we're planning to take over her finances. My stomach churned. They were discussing their betrayal so casually, like they planned a weekend getaway. I've taken care of the necessary documents, Matt said, flipping through some papers. Once she's out of the picture, everything falls to me legally. The camera caught Becky's grin. Perfect. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. I felt a wave of disgust. They were planning to destroy my life and take everything from me. But now I had the proof. I just needed more details to ensure their downfall. Hours later, they left, and I closed the laptop, my mind spinning. I called Jenna immediately. We've got them. They're planning to take over everything, my finances, my assets. They've already started the paperwork. Jenna's response was quick. Let's make sure we have all the evidence. Keep gathering until we have enough to bury them both. The next few days followed a similar pattern. I monitored the cameras, and Matt and Becky continued their vile charade, completely oblivious to the fact that I was watching their every move. The more I saw, the clearer the picture became. When the weekend ended, I returned home, greeting Matt and Lily with a smile that felt like a mask. My anger was a fire that burned hotter every time I looked at the man I once trusted. But revenge was a dish best served cold, and I was preparing the perfect storm. Taking a deep breath, I reflected on the days ahead. This was just the beginning. They thought they had outsmarted me, but they were wrong, very wrong. The game was far from over. In fact, it had just begun. Nestled in my cover at a neighbor's house, I stared at the live footage from my hidden cameras, my nerves taut as a bowstring. The evening light bathed the suburban streets in an orange glow, a stark contrast to the darkness brewing inside my home. Matt and Becky were sitting in the living room, closer than ever. They pored over documents, their expressions intense. We need to move faster, Becky urged, her voice sharp. Ava's getting too comfortable. If she catches on, our plan could fail. Relax, Becky, Matt said, though his voice carried a hint of unease. The accounts are almost fully transferred. We only need a few more days. I felt my anger boiling just beneath the surface. Matt, the man I once trusted with my life, was calmly discussing robbing me of everything I held dear. Then Becky leaned in closer, her eyes glinting maliciously. Once she's out of the picture, you'll have control of everything. Finances, property, even custody of Lily. Matt smirked. We'll be untouchable. He took a sip from his glass, looking triumphant. Have you made sure the evidence against her is solid? Becky asked, tapping the stack of papers between them. Matt nodded. Without a doubt, she won't just lose her assets, she'll lose her reputation. No one will believe her side of the story if we play this right. My stomach churned at their casual cruelty, but I forced my breathing to stay steady. I had enough now, but I wanted irrevocable proof. I waited, my eyes never leaving the screen. Hours ticked by before Matt and Becky stood up, hugging each other as if they were partners in some grand heist. They moved to the bedroom, and out of the camera's view, laughter and whispers filling the air. The timestamps recorded every movement, every vile act of betrayal. The next morning, I contacted Dave. I've got solid evidence. They're trying to frame me for financial fraud and steal everything, even Lily. Good work, Dave said. Let's meet and compile everything. We'll need a precise strategy to take them down. At his office, we spread out all the collected evidence. Photographs, the recording footage, the financial documents they had manipulated. Dave's sharp eyes scanned everything. This is more than enough. They've dug their own graves with this. So what's the next step? I asked, determination clear in my voice. We take this to Laura, your lawyer. We need to secure your assets and involve the police. I nodded. We move today. Later, at Laura's office, we laid out the evidence. She studied it with a mix of shock and admiration. You did well, Ava. This is airtight. We'll file the necessary legal motions immediately. Hours later, dressed in disguises, Jenna and I watched from a distance as police raided my house. Matt and Becky's confusion turned to panic as officers shoved past them, gathering documents and confiscating electronics. What's going on? Matt shouted, a mix of fear and fury in his voice. You're under investigation for fraud and conspiracy, an officer stated flatly. We have a warrant to search the premises. Becky's face turned white. This has to be a mistake. You can't do this. I watched, feeling a grim satisfaction. They were finally facing the consequences of their actions. Back at Jenna's, I took a deep breath, the weight of the past few weeks lifting slightly. This was just the beginning of their downfall. But for now, I allowed myself a moment of relief. They really thought they could take everything from you, Jenna said, her voice laced with disgust. They underestimated me, I replied confidently, for perhaps the first time since this all started. And they'll pay for every single thing. The path ahead was still fraught with challenges, but I was no longer the passive victim. I was ready to reclaim my life and protect what was rightfully mine. The storm had begun, and I was at its center, stronger than ever. The evidence was ironclad, and now it was time to confront Matt and Becky face to face. I waited in the living room, the documents and surveillance footage spread out on the coffee table. Every second felt like an eternity, but I kept my breathing steady and my resolve ironclad. When Matt and Becky finally walked in, their faces fell seeing me back so soon. Ava, what are you doing here? Matt asked, trying to mask his surprise. I think it's time we had a talk, I said, my voice calm but firm. All of us. Becky shifted uneasily. Is everything okay? No, Becky, everything is far from okay, I replied, placing my laptop on the table and hitting play. The footage of their conversations filled the room, their voices echoing through the space with undeniable clarity. Matt's face turned ghostly white. What the hell is this? This, I said, stepping closer, is proof of your betrayal, both of you, discussing how to ruin my life, steal my assets, and take custody of Lily. Becky's face twisted in anger. You set us up! I made sure the truth came out, I said coldly. You didn't just break my heart. You tried to ruin my life. Now you're going to pay for it. Matt's facade of concern crumbled, replaced by rage. You think you can take us down with this? You won't get away with it. Oh, but I already have, I replied, lifting a thick stack of papers. These are the legal filings, ensuring everything you've done is now in the hands of the authorities. Your bank fraud, your fake investments, your conspiracy, it's all there. You bitch, Becky screamed, lunging at me. I stepped back, but before she could get any closer, 2 police officers entered the room. Rebecca, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and other charges, the officer announced, stepping forward to handcuff her. As they led Becky away, she spat venom. You'll pay for this, Ava. You'll regret ever crossing me. I watched her without flinching, my eyes cold and unmoved. Then I turned back to Matt. And as for you, Matt's bravado flickered as another officer approached him. Matthew, you're also under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and theft. You can't do this, Matt roared as they handcuffed him. This is my house, my family. No, Matt, I said, stepping closer until I was inches from his face. This was our family. You destroyed that, remember? You'll never have the power to hurt me or anyone else again. The officers took Matt away, his curses fading as they left the house. For the first time in weeks, I felt a heavy weight lifting from my chest. Jenna came in a few moments later, having heard the commotion from outside. Are you okay? I'm fine, I replied, more determined than ever. This had to be done. Now it's time to start picking up the pieces. She nodded, her eyes filled with pride and sympathy. You did it, Ava. You took them down. Watching the empty room, I took a deep breath. The path ahead was still long, and there would be more battles to fight, but I wasn't alone. We're not done yet, Jenna. There's still a lot to do, I said, glancing at the scattered evidence on the table. But one thing's for sure, they won't get away with this. Together we began to gather the pieces of my shattered life, ready to rebuild and move forward. The storm had passed, but the journey to healing had just begun. And as I looked at the remnants of Matt and Becky's treachery, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was stronger than ever before. The courtroom was silent, except for the shuffling of papers and the low murmur of lawyers conversing quietly. I sat at the front, shoulders squared, head held high. Matt sat across from me, his gaze darting around nervously. The polished exterior he usually wore was cracking, revealing the anxiety beneath. Today was the day everything would unravel for him. The judge entered, and the room rose. "You may be seated," she said, her voice firm. Laura stood, addressing the court. "Your Honor, we have irrefutable evidence that the defendants, Matthew and Rebecca, engaged in fraudulent activity with the intent to deprive my client, Ava, of her rightful assets and reputation." She proceeded to present the evidence, the footage, the documents, the bank statements. Each piece was a nail in Matt's proverbial coffin. I watched him closely, noting the way his face paled with each revelation, the way Becky, seated next to him, fidgeted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, I'd like to call Ava to the stand," Laura said. I walked up, feeling the weight of the room's eyes on me. Taking a deep breath, I swore the oath and sat down. Laura approached me. "Ava, can you describe the events that led to this court case?" I recounted everything. The accident, my suspicions, the hidden cameras, the night I overheard their plan. My voice didn't waver as I spoke. "And why did you decide to take these steps?" Laura asked. "Because they didn't just betray me personally," I said, looking directly at Matt. "They tried to destroy my entire life. They underestimated me, thought I'd just disappear. But here I am." There were no further questions, and I returned to my seat. Matt's lawyer was next, trying to paint the actions as misunderstandings or unfortunate coincidences. But the evidence was too strong to refute. Each argument weakened under the scrutiny of the blatant facts. Finally, Matt was called to the stand. His lawyer guided him through rehearsed answers, but his guilt was glaringly obvious. "You have to believe me, Your Honor. I was manipulated. I never intended for any harm to come to Ava," Matt said, his voice shaky. "Then how do you explain the evidence?" the judge asked, raising an eyebrow. Matt faltered, looking lost. I didn't realize what Becky was planning. I was just following." "The defendant's blatant lies," Laura interjected. "But the evidence speaks for itself." The judge took her time reviewing everything, her face stern and unreadable. After what felt like an eternity, she finally spoke. "The court finds the defendants guilty of fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and theft. Sentencing will follow after further hearings." A murmur ran through the courtroom as the weight of the verdict settled. Matt's face was ashen, his bravado gone. Becky was led away in handcuffs, muttering curses under her breath. As Matt was escorted out, I caught his eye one last time. "You'll never have the power to hurt me or anyone else again." Outside, Jenna was waiting. Her face lit up when she saw me. "It's over. You did it." "I couldn't have done it without you," I replied, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. "Let's go. I need to see Lily." Returning home, I found Lily waiting, her innocent smile a beacon of hope. "Mommy, you're back." "I'm here, sweetheart," I said, hugging her tightly. "And we're going to be okay." That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, I took a moment to reflect on the journey. There was still fallout to deal with, still wounds to heal. But we'd faced the storm and come out stronger. At last, I allowed myself to breathe deeply, knowing that while the path ahead might still have challenges, the worst was behind us. And in that moment, holding my daughter and feeling the warmth of our home, I felt the first stirrings of peace. The struggle had been fierce, but I had reclaimed our lives. Matt and Becky were no longer a threat, and for the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely hopeful about the future. The first few weeks after the court ruling were a whirlwind of paperwork and loose ends. Matt and Becky were both incarcerated, awaiting further sentencing. Lily and I tried to find a new normal amidst the upheaval. One sunny morning, as I packed the last box for our move, Lily ran into the room clutching her teddy bear. "Mommy, are we really moving to a new house?" I smiled, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "Yes, sweetheart. It's a fresh start for us. A new beginning." The new house wasn't far, just a few towns over, but it represented a world of difference, a place where Matt's shadow didn't linger in every corner. The vibrant community and welcoming neighbors felt like the perfect place to rebuild. Our first visitor was Jenna, carrying a housewarming plant. "Hey, how are my favorite girls settling in?" she asked, stepping inside with a wide grin. "We're doing great, one box at a time," I laughed, hugging her. Jenna glanced around the living room. "This place is wonderful, Ava. It already feels like home." I nodded, feeling the truth of her words. It does. And this time it's our home, just Lily and me. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, I stepped out onto the porch, Jenna joining me. The cool air felt refreshing after the chaos of the past months. "So what's next?" Jenna asked, leaning against the railing. "Stabilizing, healing, moving forward," I said, my voice steady. "I want a life for Lily where she feels safe and loved, and maybe one day I'll allow myself to trust again." Jenna placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You've come so far, Ava, and you're not alone. You have friends who care about you." A few weeks later, as we settled into our routine, I received a letter from Laura. Matt's trial was over. He was sentenced to 8 years for his crimes. Becky faced 5 years for her involvement. The news brought a sense of closure, allowing me to finally breathe easier. At dinner that evening, I looked across the table at Lily. Her smile was brighter, her laughter more frequent. "How's school, sweetie?" "It's great, Mommy. I made a new friend today. Her name's Sophie," she beamed. "That's wonderful, Lily. I'm so proud of you." Later that night, I sat down with an old scrapbook, flipping through pages of memories. Despite the pain caused by Matt and Becky, these moments with Lily were precious. I realized that the trauma had made us stronger, brought us closer together. One Sunday, Jenna invited us to a barbecue at her place. The backyard was filled with laughter and the delicious smell of grilled food. I watched Lily play with other kids, her happiness radiating. It was a stark contrast to the isolation we'd felt before. As the evening drew to a close, a man approached and introduced himself. "Hi, I'm Alex, a friend of Jenna's. She's told me a lot about you." Smiling, I shook his hand. "Nice to meet you, Alex. Enjoying the barbecue?" "Yes, it's been great. Jenna throws a good party, doesn't she?" he said with a chuckle. "She mentioned you and your daughter went through quite an ordeal." I nodded, the shadows of the past briefly clouding my mind. "We did, but we're stronger now. We're moving forward." Alex's eyes were kind, understanding. "Well, if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask. It's always good to have a strong community around you." That night, after tucking Lily into bed, I reflected on Alex's words. Trust was hard to build again, but maybe it was possible. Maybe there were still good people out there, people who wouldn't betray us. I kissed Lily on the forehead and whispered, "We're stronger now, Lily. No one can break us again." As I turned off the light and left the room, a sense of peace washed over me. Our future was still unwritten, but it was ours to shape. With each passing day, I felt more certain that we were on the path to a brighter tomorrow. "I've thought it over, Vanessa. We're done. There's no future for us." Greg's words hit me like a punch to the gut. We were sitting at the dinner table, the same place where we'd shared countless meals and made plans for the future. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "What? After 3 years, you're ending this now?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. He didn't even look up. "I'm tired of the drama. Pack your stuff and leave. I need this place for someone else." The cold finality in his tone struck me dumb. I stared at him, waiting for a hint of regret or hesitation in his eyes, but there was none. The man I once thought I knew had turned into a stranger. We had met at a tech conference 3 years ago. Our connection was instantaneous. The chemistry was undeniable. Within months, I moved into his modern, high-rise apartment. We blended our lives, merging our routines and dreams, or at least, so I thought. "Is there someone else?" I couldn't help but ask. Greg finally looked up, his eyes hard and unyielding. "That's none of your business." I felt my heart sink. It wasn't just the end. It was betrayal. I pushed back from the table and stood up, my hands shaking. "I'll pack my stuff." "Good," he said, already looking at his phone, dismissing me as casually as one would a waiter. I walked into his bedroom, blinking back tears. The room had stopped feeling like mine the moment Greg uttered those words. I grabbed my suitcase and began to pack, folding clothes numbly, my mind racing to catch up with the reality unfolding before me. Halfway through, I heard Greg on the phone. His voice was low, but the apartment was silent, magnifying the sound of every word. "Finally, Jessica, we can be together. I've kicked her out." Jessica. The name echoed in my head. The pieces fell together. It wasn't just that he grew tired of me. He had someone waiting in the wings. I zipped up my suitcase. With as much dignity as I could muster, I walked to the living room. I'm leaving now. Greg glanced at me, not moving from his spot at the head of the table. Good luck, he said, his tone flat and disinterested. I stepped out into the hall, the door closing behind me with a resounding click, separating me from the past 3 years of my life. The air was cold, unwelcoming. I took a deep breath, fighting back the urge to collapse on the floor in tears. Dragging my suitcase behind me, I made my way to the elevator. I needed a plan, a place to go. As the elevator descended, I took out my phone and dialed the one person I could always count on. Megan, it's me. Can I stay with you for a while? Vanessa, are you okay? Megan's concerned voice was a balm, but it made the tears finally spill over. No, I'll explain when I get there. Of course, come over, I'm here for you. As I stepped out of the building and into the night, I was filled with a mix of heartbreak and determination. Greg and Jessica had taken something precious from me, but I would reclaim my life. Maybe even more. Tonight was the end of one chapter, but it was also the beginning of another, one where I would write my own story free from deceit and betrayal. I arrived at Megan's apartment late that night, exhausted and broken. She wrapped her arms around me the moment she opened the door. No words, just the comfort of a friend. You'll be okay here, she said softly, guiding me inside. Her apartment was warm and welcoming, cluttered with memories. Family photos and souvenirs from our college years. This place felt like a refuge. Thank you, Megan. She shook her head. No need to thank me. Let's get you settled. The next morning, I tried to focus on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into my new job at a marketing firm, arriving early and leaving late, desperate for distraction. My boss, Linda, was kind and encouraging, and I wanted to make a good impression. During one of our team meetings, Linda smiled at me warmly. You're doing great, Vanessa. We're glad to have you on board. I appreciated the reassurance, but I could barely muster a smile. The pain from Greg's betrayal was raw and constant. It gnawed at me, even as I tried to bury it under piles of work. One evening, as I packed my things at the office, my phone buzzed. It was Greg's number. Dread gripped me as I answered. Hello? Vanessa? His voice was cold, almost mocking. You must be lonely now. How does it feel to be shoved aside? My grip tightened on the phone. Why are you calling me? I bet you're miserable, he continued, ignoring my question. Must be hard to start over, isn't it? Leave me alone, Greg. His laugh was low and bitter. You're not getting rid of me that easily. I hung up, feeling my hands shake. The walls of the office seemed to close in around me. I needed air. I needed to escape his poison. Back at Megan's, I tried to calm down. Megan noticed my distress immediately. What's wrong? She asked, concern etched on her face. Greg called, I said, my voice unsteady. He's trying to torment me. Megan's expression darkened. That bastard. He's not going to get away with this. We'll figure something out. As the days went by, Greg's calls continued, each one more invasive than the last. He knew details about my new job, where I went for lunch, the friends I was trying to reconnect with. He was relentless. One afternoon, while I was packing my things at the office, I overheard Greg's voice again. This time, he was on speakerphone in a heated discussion with another woman. Can't you see? Vanessa was just in the way. She's gone now, so what's the problem? Just make sure she doesn't come back into our lives, the woman responded sharply. It wasn't Jessica. It was someone else. My heart dropped to my stomach. I left the office feeling more determined than ever. This wasn't just about me. Greg wasn't going to get away with it. Returning to Megan's apartment, I told her everything. He's not just harassing me, he's flaunting it. Her eyes blazed with anger. Then we'll make him pay, Vanessa. He's crossed a line. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a spark of hope. We were going to take him down. Not just for what he did to me, but for all the lives he tried to destroy. The harassment didn't stop. Every day brought new calls and messages from Greg. One evening, as I was settling down with a glass of wine at Megan's, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. You think you can just move on, Vanessa? Greg's voice was dripping with malice. You're nothing without me. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. What do you want, Greg? Why are you doing this? I want you to feel exactly how you made me feel. Worthless and replaceable, he replied, venom in his tone. Leave me alone, Greg. This needs to stop. You don't give the orders anymore, he sneered before hanging up. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding. It wasn't just about hurting me. Greg wanted to destroy me. That night, I confided in Megan again, her supportive presence helping to keep the panic at bay. We need to find a way to make him stop, I said, my voice shaking. Megan nodded. I'll start digging. There has to be something we can use against him. No one is perfect. A few days later, as I was working late, my phone buzzed again with a text message. You look tired. Maybe you should take better care of yourself. I froze. Greg's harassment had escalated from calls to stalking. My breath quickened as I looked around the office, feeling eyes on me from every corner. I called Megan, my voice barely a whisper. He's watching me, Megan. He knows where I am, what I'm doing. Get out of there now, she urged. I'll meet you at our place. I grabbed my things and hurried out, feeling paranoid at every turn. When I got to Megan's apartment, she was pacing, phone in hand. I've contacted a friend who might be able to help, she said. We're going to put an end to his games. The next day, I decided to change my number, hoping it would buy me some peace. But Greg's obsession knew no bounds. He somehow got hold of my new number and resumed his torment, each call more disturbing than the last. One evening, as I stared at my phone, drained and desperate, it rang again. I picked it up, determined to take control. Why can't you just leave me alone? You don't get to dictate terms, Vanessa, Greg replied with a sinister chuckle. This is far from over. I slammed the phone down, my frustration boiling over. Megan looked at me, her eyes filled with determination. This ends now. I've found something, she said, holding up a folder. Greg and Jessica are involved in shady business deals. This could be our leverage. My heart raced at the potential lifeline. What do we do? We gather evidence. We expose them, Megan said firmly. You're not alone in this. Together, we began our plan. It was time to turn the tables on Greg. Every day, we collected information, recorded calls, and documented his harassment. The weight of his actions pressed heavy on me, but Megan's unwavering support kept me focused. One evening, as I sat at my desk, Megan handed me a stack of documents. This is it. This is the proof we need. I looked through the papers, a mix of relief and anger swelling inside me. We've got him. Greg had underestimated me, and now, with Megan's help, I would make sure he paid for every bit of torment he inflicted. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, I felt like victory was within reach. The harassment continued despite our efforts to gather evidence. Greg began sending anonymous calls at all hours. Silent calls, heavy breathing, or menacing laughter that would seep into my dreams and turn them into nightmares. One night, my phone rang at 3 a.m. I answered, my exhaustion verging on despair. You can't escape me, Vanessa, whispered a voice on the other end. I immediately hung up, my heart pounding in my chest. I sat on the edge of my bed, feeling the weight of the constant fear and stress. My work was suffering, and my health was beginning to deteriorate. I felt like I was reaching my breaking point. In the morning, Megan noticed the dark circles under my eyes and the weariness in my steps. You're taking a leave from work, she said firmly. You need to focus on what's important and take care of yourself. I can't just walk away from my job, Megan. I need something to hold on to, I argued, but she stood her ground. You won't be able to fight back if you break down completely. Let's take the time you need to regroup. Reluctantly, I agreed. I informed Linda, my boss, about my situation without going into too much detail. She was understanding and granted me the leave without hesitation. We'll manage here. You take care of yourself, Vanessa, Linda said, her kindness a small relief in the storm. With the weight of work off my shoulders, Megan and I doubled our efforts to collect damning evidence against Greg and Jessica. We recorded their calls and compiled documents detailing their business malpractices. One evening, as Megan and I pored over the gathered material, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Greg. Desperate enough to take a break? You'll need it. I showed the message to Megan, my hands trembling with a mix of fear and anger. He's pushing you, trying to break you, she said, her eyes hardened with determination. We have enough now. It's time to act. We prepared our evidence, determined to confront Greg and Jessica. My heart pounded with a mixture of dread and anticipation. We were stepping into the lion's den, but I wasn't going to let Greg control my life any longer. The next night, as Megan and I were going through our plan, I received another anonymous call. I answered, bracing myself. "Heard you're taking a break. Good. More time to think about your worthless life," Greg taunted. His voice dripped with sadistic pleasure. "How long do you think you can keep this up, Greg?" I shot back, my fear giving way to anger. "You can't hide what you've done." There was a pause, then a cold laugh. "You think you can win against me? Keep dreaming." I hung up, turning to Megan. "We need to shut him down for good." Megan nodded. "We will. Tomorrow we meet with my contact. He can help us expose them." The following day we met Megan's friend, a tech expert who could help us compile and present our evidence in the most effective way. He scanned through our recordings and documents, his expression serious. "This is solid. With this, you can not only expose them but also ensure they face the consequences." The plan was set. We were ready to take action and bring Greg and Jessica to justice. Despite the fear that lingered, I felt a newfound strength rising within me. I wasn't alone in this fight. Megan's unwavering support was my anchor. We had the truth on our side, and soon Greg and Jessica's malicious games would be brought to light. The fight was far from over, but finally we were taking control. Megan and I sat in her living room, our focus entirely on the laptop screen in front of us. She had just finished her call with the tech expert who would help us compile our evidence against Greg and Jessica. "We're almost there," Megan said. "Just a few more pieces, and we can bring them down." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. "Let's get this done." Over the next few days, we worked tirelessly. Megan's friend had traced the calls, linked them to Greg, and organized all the documents detailing their shady business deals. The evidence was becoming irrefutable. One evening, Megan came back after a meetup with an old contact, her eyes wide with excitement. "Vanessa, you won't believe what I found." She handed me a folder bursting with more documents. "Greg and Jessica's entire scheme is in there. It's worse than we thought." I flipped through the pages. Fraud, embezzlement, bribery, enough to put them behind bars. One particular document caught my eye. Evidence that linked Greg's new tech company to fraudulent activity. Transactions, false accounts, all undeniable. Megan was pacing the room, energy radiating off her. "We need to make sure this hits hard. It's got to be public, and it's got to be undeniable." I glanced at the invitations scattered on the coffee table. Greg and Jessica's upcoming engagement party. The perfect stage. "We should do it at their engagement party," I suggested. "They'll have everyone important there. Their friends, business partners, all witnesses." Megan grinned. "That's risky, but it's perfect." The night of the party arrived. Megan and I got ready, our nerves on edge. "You sure you're ready for this?" she asked, securing a small camera in her purse. I nodded. "We have to be." We arrived at the venue, an upscale hotel ballroom, the air thick with opulence and pretense. Greg and Jessica were at the center, basking in their own glory. As we moved through the crowd, Greg spotted me and smirked. Well, look who decided to show. Can't resist seeing my happiness, huh?" "Congratulations," I forced out, trying not to let my disgust show. Jessica joined his side, a smug smile on her face. "Vanessa, how sweet of you to come. I thought you'd be too busy wallowing in your pity." I clenched my jaw but whispered to Megan, "Is everything set?" She nodded subtly and moved towards the stage. It was time. When most guests had settled down with their drinks in hand, Megan made her way to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice clear and steady, "we have a special presentation to make." Greg and Jessica shared a confused look. Megan connected her phone to the projector, and the screen behind her lit up with images of the documents, the transactions, the fraud, everything. "Greg and Jessica's achievements aren't what they seem," Megan continued. "Here's the truth." Gasps filled the room as the evidence unfolded. The guests were stunned, jaws dropping, eyes wide with disbelief. Greg's face turned red with fury, and Jessica's eyes filled with panic. Greg stormed towards me. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I stood my ground. "Revealing the truth. You won't hurt anyone else. You think you've won?" Jessica spat. "You're nothing." "We'll let the authorities decide that," Megan interjected. "Your reign of terror ends here." The murmurs grew louder as people began to distance themselves from Greg and Jessica. Their business associates, friends, everyone who had been fooled by their veneer of success now saw their true colors. As we walked out of the ballroom, hearing the whispers and seeing the chaos behind us, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Greg and Jessica would finally face the consequences of their actions. Megan squeezed my hand. "We did it." "We did," I replied, a small smile forming. The battle was far from over, but we had won a crucial victory. The fallout from the engagement party was swift and brutal. News spread like wildfire. Greg and Jessica's spotless reputation was in tatters. Legal agencies began to investigate, and their business partners cut ties, leaving them isolated. One evening, Megan and I sat in her living room, watching the news coverage of the scandal. "We really did it," she said, a sense of accomplishment in her voice. I nodded, yet couldn't shake off the lingering sense of foreboding. It's not over until they face real consequences. The next day, we focused on ensuring our evidence reached the right hands. Megan had connections in law enforcement, and we handed over everything we had collected. The authorities were swift to act, opening an official investigation. My phone vibrated, and I saw a text message from an unknown number. "This isn't over, Vanessa," it read. Megan glanced over my shoulder. "Let him threaten, he's losing his grip." At work, I received another message. "We'll see who wins in the end." Linda approached me, concern on her face. "Vanessa, are you all right? You seem on edge." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just dealing with personal stuff." She offered a sympathetic smile. "If you need more time, just let me know." I appreciated her understanding, but knew that staying occupied was my only defense against spiraling into fear. Megan and I continued to prepare, knowing Greg wouldn't back down without a fight. One evening, as we pored over files, the doorbell rang. Megan peered through the peephole, then whispered, "It's him." Greg stood at the door, a menacing look in his eyes. "Open up, Megan. I know you're in there." Megan held up her phone, dialing 911. "Leave, Greg. The police are on their way." He pounded on the door. "You think you can take everything from me? You're making a huge mistake." "We're not the ones who made mistakes." Megan yelled back, "You brought this on yourself." Sirens blared in the distance. Greg sneered. "This isn't over," he said before turning on his heel and storming off. The police arrived moments later, taking our statements. They assured us they'd keep an eye on Greg, but it did little to quell the anxiety gnawing at me. Days turned into weeks, and the investigation against Greg and Jessica gained momentum. Megan and I attended hearings, providing testimony and handing over evidence. Each appearance was nerve-wracking, but we stood firm. One afternoon, after another long session at court, Megan and I sat at a cafe, trying to unwind. "It's happening, Vanessa. They're going to pay," she said, sipping her coffee. "I know," I replied, though the tension still knotted in my stomach. "I just want it to be over." As if on cue, my phone buzzed. Another message from Greg. "You'll regret this." I handed the phone to Megan, who frowned. "He's desperate, losing control." "We need to stay vigilant," I said. "He won't go down quietly." Later that night, we received a call from the lead investigator. "We've made arrests. Greg and Jessica are in custody. Your evidence was instrumental." Relief washed over me, mixed with a cautious sense of victory. "Thank you," I managed to say, my voice thick with emotion. Megan hugged me tightly. "We did it, Vanessa. It's finally over." For the first time in months, I allowed myself a deep breath of relief. The nightmare was ending, and Greg and Jessica would face the consequences of their actions. There was still a long road ahead, but with Megan by my side, I knew I could face whatever came next. We walked out onto the balcony, the city lights twinkling in the night. "To new beginnings," Megan said, raising a glass. "To new beginnings," I echoed, feeling hope for the first time in a long while. The news of Greg and Jessica's arrest sent ripples through their social circles and the business community. I was bombarded with messages from people expressing both shock and support. It was a whirlwind, but I knew the real confrontation wasn't over. Megan and I were busy preparing for Greg and Jessica's engagement party, to which we had received an unexpected invitation. We knew it was a setup for their propaganda, but we also saw it as the best opportunity to expose them in front of their most influential acquaintances. The night of the party arrived, and I felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Megan's hand on my shoulder was a calming presence. We had everything we needed on a USB drive, carefully hidden in Megan's purse. "Ready?" she asked, her eyes full of determination. "As I'll ever be," I replied, taking a deep breath. As we entered the grand ballroom, the opulence of the setting didn't faze me. All I could think about was the confrontation ahead. Greg and Jessica were mingling with their guests, the picture of a perfect, happy couple. I steeled myself for what was about to come. Greg spotted us and walked over, a sly smile on his face. "Vanessa, Megan, so glad you could make it." "Couldn't miss it," Megan said, her tone neutral but laced with hidden intent. Jessica joined Greg and looked at us with feigned sweetness. "Welcome. Enjoy the night." The tension was palpable as the evening progressed. Finally, the moment arrived. The crowd hushed as Greg and Jessica made their way to the front for their speeches. Megan and I edged closer to the stage, USB drive in hand. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate our love and partnership," Greg began, his voice oozing smugness. "We've worked hard to build our life and careers, and we couldn't have done it without your support." As Jessica started speaking, Megan gave me a nod and moved towards the AV system. I followed her, my heart pounding. Megan discreetly inserted the USB drive into the computer connected to the projector. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have something special to share with you tonight," Megan announced, her voice cutting through Jessica's speech. The crowd turned their attention to us, confusion painting their faces. Greg's expression shifted from smugness to anger. "What is this?" he hissed. "Just a little truth," Megan replied, hitting play on the computer. The projector screen lit up with images and documents detailing Greg and Jessica's illegal activities. Gasps and murmurs filled the room as the guests absorbed the information. The look of horror on Jessica's face was priceless. Greg lunged towards us, fury etched on his face. "You think you can do this to me? To us?" I stood my ground. "This is what you deserve, Greg. You've hurt too many people." "Everyone, this is nonsense," Jessica shouted, trying to regain control. "They're lying." But the damage was done. People were already on their phones, likely calling legal advisors and business associates. Greg and Jessica's empire was crumbling before their eyes. Security moved in to escort Greg and Jessica out of the building as the guests and media followed closely behind, snapping pictures and shouting questions. The pandemonium was a stark contrast to the controlled, smug atmosphere from earlier. Megan and I stood side by side, watching the chaos unfold. "We did it," she said, a triumphant smile spreading across her face. I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "Yes, we did." As we walked out of the now chaotic venue, I felt a sense of closure. Greg and Jessica had finally met their downfall, and we were free from their shadow. Later that night, back at Megan's, we clinked glasses in victory. "To new beginnings," Megan toasted. "To truth and justice," I added. The nightmare was over, and a brighter future awaited. With Greg and Jessica arrested, a wave of relief washed over me. Their empire had crumbled, and for once I felt a sense of peace. But the aftermath wasn't without its challenges. In the following weeks, Megan and I attended court sessions determined to see this through to the end. One afternoon, after another exhausting day in court, Greg was let out in handcuffs, rage flickering in his eyes. He turned to me, his voice dripping with venom. "This isn't over, Vanessa. You'll regret this." I met his gaze, unwavering. "No, Greg, it's over for you. You've been playing with lives for too long." As the guards led him away, I felt Megan squeeze my hand in silent reassurance. She had been my rock through all of this, and we had grown closer than ever. Outside the courthouse, the media swarmed us, but Linda was there to support me. "You did good, Vanessa," she said, a warmth in her voice that I hadn't felt in a long time. "You're stronger than you know." I managed a tired smile. "Thanks, Linda. It hasn't been easy, but it's worth it." Returning to Megan's apartment, I felt the weight of the past few months begin to lift. We sat on the couch, a silence settling between us that was both comfortable and reflective. Megan broke the silence first. "You've come a long way, Vanessa. I'm proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without you," I replied, sincerity in my voice. "You've been my anchor." She grinned. "That's what friends are for. Speaking of which, I've been thinking, why don't we go on a trip? Get away from all this for a bit." "A trip?" I raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, a fresh start. We deserve it," she said with a spark of excitement in her eyes. "Maybe somewhere sunny?" I laughed, the idea growing on me. I could use some sunshine. As plans for our trip began to take shape, I also started exploring new career opportunities. It felt like the right time to leave the past behind and pursue something that truly fulfilled me. Linda had been incredibly supportive, offering connections and advice. During a casual meeting at a local cafe, Linda and I discussed potential career moves. "Have you thought about starting your own firm?" she asked, sipping her coffee. The idea was daunting, but also exhilarating. It crossed my mind, but it feels like a big leap. "You've shown incredible resilience and strength. You're more than capable." Her words stuck with me, and over the next few days, the idea grew in my mind. Megan continued to encourage me, helping me brainstorm and plan. One evening, as we were packing for our trip, Megan looked at me thoughtfully. "You know, we've been through hell, but look at us now. We're stronger for it." I nodded, touched by her words. "We are. And now, we get to start over." The trip was exactly what we needed. Sun, sand, and the luxury of time to reflect and heal. We spent days lounging by the beach, exploring new places and enjoying the simple pleasure of good company. Back home, I made the decision to start my own marketing firm, combining my expertise with a newfound passion for authenticity and helping others rebuild. Megan, ever supportive, offered to help with the legal aspects and logistics. Opening the office on that first day felt like stepping into a new chapter of my life. The past was a painful but necessary lesson, and now the future seemed bright and full of possibilities. Megan moved in with me temporarily, helping with the firm and providing moral support. Our bond deepened, and together we faced the world with renewed vigor. As we toasted to new beginnings in our new office, I realized that the darkness I had endured had shaped me into someone stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace whatever came next. The story of Greg and Jessica was now a closed chapter, and I was ready to write my own story from here on out.